Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes, sir. Then again I'm falling. Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes, sir. Then again I'm falling. Let Jesus work it out. Please, your Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Please, your Father would work it out. Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes, sir. Then again I'm falling. Sometimes I'm gaining, then again I'm losing. Sometimes I'm rising, yes, sir. Then again I'm falling. Let Jesus work it out. Please, your Father would work it out. Oh, let God work it out. Please, your Father would work it out.
All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and we are going to do a little bit of a deep dive tonight into the location of the Ark of the Covenant. Where is the Ark of the Covenant? It's the million-dollar question so many people have theories about. We're going to be talking about all of them. Everything from the Jewish theory that it's somewhere buried under the Temple Mount. I found many evangelical, even Ron Wyatt, a Seventh-day Adventist, claiming that it was under tunnels across Jerusalem. Ron Wyatt is a Seventh-day Adventist, kind of a kook. Everybody's dismissed him. He claims to have actually seen the Ark of the Covenant, one of the few people in history to claim that they have seen it. Obviously, the most popular, and we're going to be watching clips from Graham Hancock talking about Ethiopia, Aksum, and that it was the Ethiopian Jews before Christ, when the Babylonians in 587 destroyed the first temple. It was then that the Ethiopian Jews, who had a location on Elephantine, which is an island in the Nile, supposedly took the ark and traveled southward all the way until they hit their present-day location there in northern Ethiopia. So that is one of the more popular ones. We're going to be talking about the Templar theory. I found actually a gentleman who claims to be very high up in the Knights Templars, kind of a quack, who claims that there's multiple Arks of the Covenant. It wasn't just one Ark of the Covenant. There's multiple Arks, and that the Templars actually rescued one from Jerusalem during the Crusades, and they brought it back to France. And then upon persecution of the Templars, they took it to Scotland under Robert the Bruce, and it then has mysteriously disappeared ever since. Some claim it's in North America. Other theories, we'll listen to Ben Carson, or not Ben Carson. It's the black guy. Let me pull up the tab. What's the guy's name? Billy Carson. Billy Carson. Ben Carson is the politician. You know the Billy Carson, We Was Kangs? He's like the esotericist. He did the famous debate, what was it, a year or two ago with Wesley Huff. He got annihilated, has all these weird theories about the Emerald Tablet of Thoth and ancient Egypt and how, the black man's been held down by the white man and whitewashed history. He claims that the Ark of the Covenant is actually an Egyptian creation, and that the Jews, Moses in particular, Billy Carson claims, stole it from the Egyptians, if you believe that. There's also a theory that Ben Shapiro put forth, and I've actually heard a couple Jews, those who don't think that it's somewhere in Jerusalem, buried underneath the earth in some underground tunnel. Some claim that the Vatican, the Catholic Church, stole it after the fall of Rome. So, yeah, Mount Nebo, many people believe that to be more theological. So we're going to get into that theory as well. That one's regarding the prophet Jeremiah and him hiding it in a cave on Mount Nebo, which is the mountain in which Moses saw the promised land for the first time. However, when I was doing research, again, the writings regarding that taking place existed after the time of Jeremiah, and there's no physical evidence. People have looked. We don't know. It could be there. But a bigger question than all of this of where it is, one of the things we're going to be getting into is, does it even matter? Why are people so obsessed with finding the Ark of the Covenant? And I'll give you a hint. It's very popular in the West related to Judaizers, people, especially Protestants, who tend to not have a sacramental worldview. So we're going to get into why is it that, and I looked for today's stream, I was trying to find any Byzantine reference of a commissioning to find the Ark of the Covenant, imperial discussions, anything that was put out by the state. Nothing at all. So it's interesting that the obsession with where the Ark of the Covenant is very much a Western phenomenon. And we're going to get into why all that is. So smash that like. We're going to be covering 10 different theories on where the Ark of the Covenant is today. And we got so many videos to be playing, going into people presenting these different theories. I have even one article, I don't know if you guys saw last year, in 2025, the CIA claimed that they knew where the Ark of the Covenant was, according to the CIA. We're going to read that document as well. So smash that like, guys. We got a super chat goal of 30 today, trying to reach 30. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to send those in on Dono Chat or Streamlabs. They tend to take a little bit less out than YouTube. But if you prefer YouTube, please use YouTube. And if you're feeling generous, gift some Kotal Crew memberships. We need some memberships in the chat. So many people theirs had expired, they were requesting some people share some new memberships. So if you guys are feeling generous, please do so. All right, let's get into today's topic now. So the Ark of the Covenant is one of the most mysterious objects in all of human history. There has been so much written about it. There are so many History Channel documentaries trying to decipher, did it have nuclear powers? You know, Randall Carlson, the gentleman who's been on Joe Rogan podcast, friends with Graham Hancock, who we're going to be talking about today, he believes that the Ark of the Covenant had the ability to levitate objects. Now, is that true? Is there any evidence? We don't know. Most people don't believe it to be. Some people do. However, there's theories about it being guarded by Ethiopian monks in Ethiopia that are developing cataracts and radiation due to what's exuding from the box known as the Ark of the Covenant. People claim it's hidden under Jerusalem. It's hidden in Ethiopia. It's hidden in the vaults of the Vatican. Potentially. I wouldn't put it past them. And some, as we'll look to, even claim that the Knights Templars took it during the Crusades. However, it's believed that whoever finds it is going to uncover absolute and immense divine power, that all the things described in the Old Testament about taking the ark to battle, it judging the Israelites, destroying idols of the heretics and the Canaanites and those worshiping Dagon and all that different stuff, they think that this is still the case. But here's the question no one asks, and that's essentially the point of today's discussion, is why does everyone care so much for the Ark of the Covenant? You see, from Hollywood to Protestant prophecy circles, these charismatic pastors, they believe that this is the ultimate lost artifact of human history, and it's fair to say in the Old Testament, it is the most sacred and prized object. And we're going to be talking about why it being an object and Christ being a person is a big delineation, and one of the reasons you don't find the Byzantines or really any Eastern Orthodox tradition obsess over recovering the Ark of the Covenant. Many people see it as a missing weapon, as God's immediate power here in this world, or a piece of unfinished biblical history. For some of the Jews, they believe that they need the Ark of the Covenant to complete the restoration of the third temple, that the third temple will not be totally complete until the Ark of the Covenant is returned to it, leading some to speculate that the theories regarding it being under the Temple Mount in Jerusalem or various parts of Jerusalem is a way to potentially destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque, claiming that not only do they need to destroy it to build the third temple, but some claiming emphatically that the Ark of the Covenant is right there in the Temple Mount, and it was buried to keep the Babylonians from taking it. You know, the most common theory is that the Babylonians took it. In 587 BC is when they destroyed the temple. And here's the thing, though, that it makes sense logically that the Babylonians who destroyed the temple probably took it. However, what is odd is that the Babylonians, in a sense, were very bureaucratic. They kept immaculate records, and they described everything that they took from the temple. The Ark of the Covenant is not on there. So even though that's kind of the general idea, is that it was lost to history in 587 BC, probably the Babylonians destroyed it or it was lost. Many speculate that the people of Israel, the Jews of Israel before Christ, would have gone out of their way to preserve this object, and that there's no way they would have let the Babylonians destroy it. So this obsession is really highlighting something deeper, and it's not just about the Ark of the Covenant per se, but it's how people read the Bible. Because when you re-examine this from an Orthodox perspective, the Ark of the Covenant really doesn't matter, because the Ark of the Covenant was just a typology of Christ. It was the presence of God in the Old Testament. It held the Ten Commandments, the tablets of the Ten Commandments, representing the law, in a sense, representing the Word of God in the Old Testament. It had a pot of manna, representing God's providence and sustenance for those who obey and are faithful to him and his commandments. That even when you're wandering in the desert, God will give you sustenance. And then we have the rod of Aaron, insinuating and highlighting authority as it relates to the Israelite people. You have the commandments, the law, the word. You have manna, the promise, the sustenance of God, his grace. And then you have the priest, Aaron, the rod that buds, right? Out of the 12 tribes, it's Aaron's rod that buds, highlighting that he is the true priest and substantiating the authority of the priesthood. All three of those objects were present in the Ark of the Covenant. Notice how Christ fulfills all of those. Christ is the King of Kings. He is the fulfillment of the law. He is the Word of God. The mystery of the Ark of the Covenant has already been fulfilled. Christ's incarnation is the manna. And that's what we participate in with the Eucharistic celebration every liturgy. So Orthodoxy doesn't ask, where is the ark? Orthodoxy asks, what has the ark become? And from that vantage point, it's already been fulfilled. It's no longer an important historical piece to, let me rephrase that. It is a important historical item, but theologically, it has no importance within the Orthodox Church. And it's funny, when I was doing research for this stream, I noticed that it's the Orthodox, when I was trying to find any references of the emperor or any sort of statement regarding an exploration for the Ark of the Covenant, couldn't find anything. But what I did find is exploration for Christian relics, commissioning explorations for getting relics that related back to Christ or the Theotokos. Because what the Ark of the Covenant is an object representing God's dwelling amongst the people, but it's in an object. When Christ incarnates, when the Logos becomes man, now God is fully immediate. We don't need an object to signify our relationship or the dwelling place of God anymore. You see, the ark contained the word. It contained the sustenance, what we would consider the flesh, the Eucharistic celebration. And the ark overshadows the Theotokos, because what emerges out of the ark is divinity. What emerges out of the Theotokos, when she says yes to the angel Gabriel at the Annunciation, she is then the conduit for God in the world, similar in ways that the Ark of the Covenant was for the Old Testament Israelites. And so why Orthodox Christians don't care or chase the ark, I couldn't find any evidence of Orthodox Christians chasing after the ark, is that they're not, Orthodoxy is not so concerned with uncovering these historical items when the truth and the validity of our faith has already been fulfilled. It's like looking for, something that's so antiquated and really has no importance to the world today. This is a huge differentiation. It's not because it's not important historically, it is. But the meaning, what the Protestants and what the Jews who are obsessed with discovering the Ark of the Covenant, what they neglect is the full validity and veracity of Christ's incarnation. And that's why I say, continuing through this, I kept finding these sort of Judaizers, right? There are Protestants that are obsessed with this that would claim the divinity of Christ. But I found so many esotericists, conspiracy theorists, they would not claim the divinity of Christ. The Jews that we're going to be looking at do not claim the divinity of Christ. The Seventh-day Adventist, Ron Wyatt, who claims to have seen the Ark of the Covenant, again, a heretical theology. And you can see that all these people that don't have a sacramental world in which God already incarnated and he sanctified matter. That's why we are participating in theosis. That's why you and I exist in a privileged ontology compared to that of Adam and Eve. Christ has already come. What the Ark of the Covenant signified has already been fulfilled. And so in Orthodoxy, the altar is the Holy of Holies. The Eucharist is the true presence of God, and the church is his dwelling place. It is the body. And so understand, from the Orthodox perspective, the ark is a typology of first the Theotokos, and then second, the church itself, the bride of Christ. So we're going to be covering all this different stuff as to what the Ark of the Covenant is briefly, and then getting into some of these conspiracies about where its current location is. I'm going to end with asking you guys, where do you think the Ark of the Covenant is? Is it in Ethiopia? Is it in the Vatican? Is it still in Jerusalem? I have one video of a guy claiming that it's in Qumran and Israel won't let him dig for it. Again, we never know. Is it in France? Is it in North America, as some people claim? We don't know, but maybe by the end of this, we'll come to some type of an agreement on what is most likely. But from the outset here on the discussion, from an Orthodox perspective, the Ark of the Covenant has been surpassed. It's really, one of the things that I was speculating is whether it even has power anymore. I would imagine, given that Christ has already come, given, during the crucifixion, the tearing of the curtain in the temple, that does this item even have power anymore? And that's where you get people like the Randall Carlsons of the world that believe it has to do with some type of nuclear radiation or something like that. It's able to levitate objects. The reason why people died from touching it is because it was radioactive. I don't know about any of that. Again, because I believe in God, the Ark of the Covenant doesn't need some physical scientific mechanism for why maybe it was able to do and perform miracles or associated with miracles in the Old Testament. It was God's will. It was God that was doing that. It wasn't the Ark. The Ark was the place in which it represented the dwelling place of God. It was God that did that. And you see this objectification of these objects. That's why I said the Ark really represents how people read the Bible more than anything. And that's why these denominations, these Protestant denominations that aren't sacramental, become obsessed with discovering these Old Testament objects as validating some type of continuity between them and the biblical narrative, because they don't have one. They don't have sacraments. They don't have the church. They don't have a real historicity. So what they do is they dwell on the discovery of these objects as somehow pertinent to their own Protestant faith in 2026. So we're going to get into all that stuff. Smash that like, guys. Appreciate you all being here. Looks like a couple super chats came in. Rui throws in 10 euros. No comment. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Josiah Elleron throws in 20, says, my inspiring brother, God bless you in your work. Thank you very much, Josiah. Really appreciate the support, my man. How many of you guys have actually dove into this whole Ark of the Covenant thing? I'm curious how many of you have researched and focused on this as a topic of discovery. Yeah, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones, exact same thing. The idea is the power is in the object. The power is not in the object. The power is in God, and that's why we as Christians no longer care about the Ark of the Covenant. It's about Christ. It's about God. All right. So first thing I want to show you guys is let's just discuss what exactly the Ark of the Covenant is. What is the Ark of the Covenant? And so if anybody who hasn't read their Bible lately, I will go over it with you. This is a study guide that I put together. It'll be available over at the Logos Academy. If you guys enjoy topic discussions like this is literally what we do as men over at the Logos Academy. We get into private groups and talk about stuff like this all the time. So if you would if you would like to participate in those discussions, we have a meeting tomorrow night, actually. We'll be reading Father Cyril from Rose, chapter 12 of the Orthodox the Orthodox Survival course, studying modern art and spirituality. We got 2 more sessions left in the Orthodox Survival course, and then we're going to have completed that at the Logos Academy, and then we're going to be diving in to a new text. We don't know what the group's going to decide, but all of those meetings are recorded if anybody actually wants access to those. You can literally read the document along, and I have a covering of every single chapter. So anyways, here's the study guide. This will be available over at the Logos Academy. Where is the Ark of the Covenant? This is the question that we're ultimately asking. But before you can ask where it is, you need to know what it is. And so what is the Ark of the Covenant? It is the theological center of Israel's cultic life in the Old Testament, a convergence point of the divine presence of God the covenantal law, Moses, the Ten Commandments, and sacred kingship. It's a container. The law, manna, Aaron's rod I mentioned. It's a throne. It's a mercy seat. It's God's footstool. It's a war palladium carried into battle. And it's a liturgical axis central for tabernacle and temple worship. This is a sort of mock image. And some of you guys may have seen Donald Trump and his Ark of the Covenant replica. We're going to get into that in just a second. This is just to introduce what it is to people. And then we're going to turn to some new documents here. But the ark is constructed according to a revealed pattern. This is not human invention, but heavenly archetype made visible. So Exodus 25, 10 through 22, I don't have the whole verse, but they shall make an ark of acacia wood, and you shall overlay it with pure gold, and you shall make a mercy seat of pure gold, and you shall make 2 cherubim. Now, I went back and found went to Exodus 25 here in the Orthodox Study Bible, and I was just curious what the footnote says from an Orthodox perspective. So this whole section, again, I don't have the whole verse, but this is where the directions as to how the Ark of the Covenant should be constructed are explicated. And it reads, the footnote, I'm not going to read the whole biblical passage, but the footnote in the Orthodox Study Bible says this: the first thing made for the tabernacle was the Ark of Testimony. See, testifying to God's power. The manna testifies to God's providence and his sustenance for those who obey. The law testifies to the commandments of God. And the rod testifies to God's authority that is, through grace, given to the priesthood. Because it foreshadows the mother of God with Christ in her womb, Christ in her womb is typified by the contents eventually placed in the ark, the pot of manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the 10 Commandments. For he is the heavenly manna. His death and resurrection are life-giving, and he is the lawgiver and the fulfiller of the law he gave. And not to mention the judger of the law. He is the person who will judge us and how we actually upheld the spiritual law as Christians. So, throwing all that in there. Key symbolic elements: acacia wood, gold, cherubim, mercy seat. You get it. We already talked about the contents that are inside of it. Represents law, provision, authority. I mentioned all that stuff. Disappearance and mystery. After the Babylonian conquest in 586, 87, the ark vanishes. We have no historical record of it. Now, one of the only pieces that we have actually talking about the ark after the destruction is a copper scroll that was found in Qumran. Those that are familiar with your non-canonical texts would be familiar with what's referred to as the Dead Sea Scrolls that were also found in Qumran. But in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's one scroll that's actually on copper. It's not on papyri. And on that copper scroll, it describes the contents that the Jews took out of the temple before the Babylonians came to destroy it. And it's believed, again, we're going to watch a video, one scholar, I think he's an American scholar working in Israel, wants to dig up a site in Qumran, which the Israeli government will not let him. He claims that based on this copper scroll, this is evidence that this is where it would be buried. Now, is that the case or not? I'm skeptical, but I wanted to point that out as what I discovered is there is some reference to it after the Babylonian. Now, some of the other theories about whether it be on, whether Jeremiah hid it in Maccabees chapter 2, those are debated, whether it actually was written during the time of Jeremiah, but I'll let you make your own case. Anyways, there is no definitive canonical account of where the Ark of the Covenant went after the Babylonians destroyed it. I think the most popular, as we'll get into, the most popular 2 theories is that it's in the Temple Mount. This is what the majority of Jews believe, that the Ark of the Covenant is still inside the Temple Mount, and eventually they believe they're going to excavate it and bring it into the third temple. Now, Ethiopia is the other one, and Ethiopia is absolutely anomalous. I think it's the most interesting of the 10 theories that we're going to present on where exactly the Ark of the Covenant potentially is. But what did the Ark do So we've talked about what it is. It's the mercy seat of God. It contains the law. It contains manna. It contains the rod of Aaron. It is associated with the direct presence of God amongst the Israelites. But what did it do? Well, it serves many different functions, actually. One of which is the ark leads and guides Israel. It goes before the people as a divine guide and signals movement and rest. The Ark of the Covenant of the Lord went before them to seek out a resting place. That's in Numbers 10:33. Moses' invocation, rise up, O Lord, let your enemies be scattered. Numbers 10:35, again related to the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark stops natural forces, such as the Jordan River. And Joshua, the waters stood and rose up in a heap. Now, this is obviously also typological of Moses in the Red Sea, when the Jews fled Egypt. Like I said, it echoes Red Sea crossing, demonstrates cosmic authority over creation. The ark brings military victory. So functions as divine war presence, causes victory when honored properly. Jericho in the book of Joshua 6 through 20. War cry theology, Numbers 10:35. Again, reference back to Moses. The ark can be misused and fail in battle. So the obedience of the Israelites dictates the efficaciousness of the ark. Again, realize everything we're talking about the ark is what Christ is for us. What it does, refuses to function as a magical weapon. Now, I put this down here with the meaning, we'll get to it, but Israel brings ark into battle wrongly. Again, 1 Samuel 4:3 through 30 or 3 through 11. Result: Israel is defeated, and the ark is captured by the Philistines. They actually capture the ark and take it from Israel. Now, a form of God's judgment himself. Now, ironically, when the Philistines take it, it actually destroys some of their false gods when it's in the presence of the ark. But down here, so when the ark refused to function as a magical weapon, I highlight the meaning. God is not controlled by ritual manipulation. Now, why do I highlight that? Are you guys familiar with all these Jewish tactics to like fool God and doing different things on Sabbath? And oh, well, you can't participate with electricity, so they leave the lights on and have shades over. Again, all these weird rules and regulations to try to get around and skirt around the law. I thought, that's really interesting that so much of modern Judaism, you can find these videos all over TikTok and X of Jews telling other Jews how to get away with certain things during certain periods. And I thought, that's interesting because one of the examples of the Ark of the Covenant and the Israelites being defeated is Jews trying to do exactly that. And that God demonstrated that he is not bound by ritual manipulation. The Ark brings judgment to the enemies, destroys idols, it sends plagues. Dagon, then that's the photo I have right here. Dagon is the half fish, half male deity, ancient Philistine god, and then Philistine affliction. So not only does it destroy their idol, it also begins to destroy them. Meaning the ark reveals supremacy of Yahweh over all pagan gods. The ark brings blessings, brings prosperity and blessing when honored properly. The ark enforces holiness, judgment on Israel, kills those who approach it improperly. Now, Uzzah, interesting little narrative in Scripture regarding the Ark of the Covenant. He is commissioned to actually carry the ark. And as they're walking, apparently it gets caught on the threshing floor while they're transporting the ark, and the ark is getting ready to slide off the carrier that they have for it. And Uzzah goes to catch it, but he is not allowed to touch the Ark of the Covenant, and he dies immediately. So, talking about how the ark will kill those who approach it improperly. Holiness is dangerous when approached irreverently. The ark establishes Jerusalem as a sacred center. All right, here I have a little bit of a highlight of where it was and how the temple was believed to be constructed at that point. And it makes Jerusalem the religious capital of the Jews. The ark confirms divine kingship, serves as a footstool for the throne of God. The ark is a liturgical center, anchors Israeli worship and sacrificial systems. And the ark reveals God's glory. It manifests divine glory visibly. It objectifies it so people can actually witness it. Because the average person is not pure enough like Moses to actually talk with God like he does at the burning bush and witness the backside of God. But the Ark of the Covenant, which houses the dwelling place of God, his footstool, they can see that. What happens as the Ark has eschatological loss, it disappears from history. In Jeremiah 3:16, they says, "They shall say no more, the Ark of the Covenant," meaning that it points towards a future transformation of divine presence. And that's where, as the Orthodox, that's how we see it. Where the Ark of the Covenant is now does not matter. It is not significant. It has no power anymore. Christ has fulfilled it. I mean, Christ is the Word. So even, the tablets of the Ten Commandments, if we were to find the originals, yeah, that would be worth something for sure. And there is an importance to that. The Ten Commandments are continued into the New Testament. But I believe if we were to find the Ark of the Covenant, it is not going to be exuding all this magical, mystical power that people can't get close to, because the power of the ark was God, and God already became man. That's why, as I said, it's Judaizers that still believe that the ark holds all this power. And whether it be Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost, they've convinced us that the power is in the object, and it's not in God himself. So just to quickly go over the Orthodox perspective here, because we've already hit a little bit pieces of it, that from the Orthodox perspective, the ark is not treated as a historical artifact, but as a mystery of divine indwelling, and God chooses to dwell among his people without ceasing to be transcendent. Therefore, the incarnated Christ is more valuable in every facet than the Ark of the Covenant. And this is one of the reasons why I was speculating. This is my own opinion here, but prepping for the stream and looking at how Byzantium never was really interested in finding the Ark of the Covenant, they were very interested in finding relics of Christ, the Theotokos, or Christian saints. Because for them, the power and the importance of the Ark of the Covenant didn't matter anymore since Christ came, and because he sanctified creation, the real goal, what the Byzantines were searching out, was relics of holy saints, relics of anything regarding Christ or the Theotokos. That's what they wanted, because they believed the material effects, the material divinity of the Ark of the Covenant is fulfilled in Christ, and the relics of saints in Christ and the Theotokos has more power than if they were to have the actual Ark of the Covenant. That was the Orthodox perspective. So the ark is therefore the throne of God on earth, the center of liturgical life, everything we said, but it's a typology, right? It's a typology of the Theotokos. It's a typology of the church. As the covenant, the Ark of the Covenant contains the law, the Theotokos contains Christ. As the Ark of the Covenant overlaid with pure gold, the Theotokos all wholly purified and sanctified by God through grace. The Ark of the Covenant overshadowed by cherubim, the Theotokos is overshadowed by the Holy Spirit. Ark of the Covenant, dwelling place of God's presence. Theotokos, dwelling place of God himself. And so regarding the Holy Spirit overshadowing the Theotokos, that's from Luke 1:35. The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So fathers see this not as a coincidence, but an intentional divine patterning. Patristic insight. Gregory the Wonder Worker calls Mary the ark gilded by the Spirit. St. John of Damascus emphasizes her as the living ark. And as I said, the ark is also the church. That this is a progression from ark, Theotokos to church, increasing fullness of divine indwelling. And so, biblical anchor, you are now the temple of God. That's the second epistle in Corinthians. You see, because Christ sanctified matter, your physical body is more important than the Ark of the Covenant, because God can actually dwell within you now, right? This is important here theologically from an Orthodox perspective. You, with human nature, because God incarnated as fully God, fully man, you are in a privileged position. You, as a sacred object, is more important than the box, the wooden box covered in gold, known as the Ark of the Covenant. You are the Ark. So in Orthodox liturgical life, the altar functioned as the continuation of the ark. It contains relics in the Eucharist. It is veiled and approached with fear and reverence. The church is thus the new Holy of Holies, the cosmic ark carrying salvation into the world. How many times have you heard that in Orthodox homilies, talking about the church as the ark of salvation? The ark of salvation. And so a critical Orthodox insight, the ark reveals the danger of unmediated holiness. Uzzah dies touching it improperly. Only consecrated priests may approach. This anticipates the ascetic preparation required for communion, the fear of God in liturgical life. The ark, as an eschatological vision, the ark ultimately transcends history. So this is a verse from the book of Revelation. The temple of God was opened in heaven, and the ark was seen. Chapter 11, verse 19. Immediately followed the vision of the woman, Revelation 12. The Orthodox tradition reads this: the ark equals the Theotokos. The ark equals heavenly reality of divine presence. And you, of course, in heaven, you're in eternity, so all things are present. So that is a little bit of the theological background now. Where is the Ark of the Covenant? That's the big question that we're going to answer now. Where is the Ark of the Covenant now? I did research and found 10 competing theories. 10 theories on where the Ark could be, and I'm curious what you guys find most compelling. I'm sure it's probably the Ethiopian theory, but here's all 10 theories that I could find that have some probability. There was some outlandish theories, aliens and stuff like that. We're not including any of that nonsense. Here are some legitimate theories about where it is. The number one, the most common, the most easily skeptical, if you don't want to fall into belief of all these other theories, is that the Babylonians destroyed it, or they took it. So 586, 587, the destruction of the temple. The claim is the ark was destroyed or looted during the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem. This is the last explicit reference we have. This is when it becomes lost to history. Babylon is known to have plundered the temple, Kings 25. The ark disappeared from the biblical narrative. The book of Jeremiah 3:16 suggests a future where the ark is no longer remembered or remade. Now, the evidence against the Babylonians destroying it or taking it. In regards to taking it, here's my biggest problem with this being true is that the Babylonians took incredible and impeccable records of everything that they took from the temple. The Ark of the Covenant is not mentioned there. And if they were to take the Ark of the Covenant, this most sacred object in all of Judaism and amongst the Israelites during the destruction of the first temple, you'd think they would have noted that. So because they don't, I'm very suspicious of the Babylonians actually taking the ark during this period. The evidence against this theory is that there's no explicit mention of the ark among the looted items, as I just said. And they had great records. Silence may imply it was hidden or removed prior to destruction. And that's actually the majority Jewish claim, as we'll get into. Many Jews do not believe that the Babylonians destroyed it. It's more of a secular academic theory that this is just makes sense. If you're a skeptic, this is probably the most plausible. But the scholarly assessment says historically plausible but unconfirmed, represents the simplest minimalist explanation possible. Hidden beneath the Temple Mount. This is theory number 2. This is the theory that most Jews believe. Most Jews believe that it is here. The ark was hidden in subterranean chambers beneath the temple before the Babylonian invasion. And we do know that there's many subterranean chambers and conduits and stuff underneath the Temple Mount. That is a fact. Not all of them have been explored. It needs more excavation if you're actually going to get to it, which they can't because the Al-Aqsa Mosque is sitting there. The evidence for the Jewish theory is rabbinic tradition. This is what the Babylonian Talmud says on Yama 52b. King Josiah hid the ark, is what they claim. That King Josiah hid the Ark of the Covenant before the Babylonians came. The Mishnah also suggests a hidden chamber beneath the temple complex where the Ark of the Covenant is located. Theologically coherent, Ark too sacred to be captured. However, the evidence against the Jewish theory is that the sources are centuries later. There is no primary source during the destruction of the first temple to point to this being the case. There's no archaeological confirmation. Obviously, the Temple Mount is inaccessible anyways. And so it's strong within Jewish tradition, historically untestable, but plausible. Now, theory number 3, this was mentioned in the chat earlier, hidden by prophet Jeremiah on Mount Nebo. So, claim the prophet Jeremiah hid the ark in a cave to be revealed in the future. Evidence for this being the case is, as was referenced in the chat, Maccabees 2, 4 through 8. Explicit claim of concealment. Location, mountain where Moses viewed the promised land, Mount Nebo. Evidence against this being the case. Written again centuries after the prophet Jeremiah. Likely theological, explains absence of ark in Second Temple, point towards future restoration. So scholarly assessment, theologically significant, historically uncertain. Now 4, probably the most notorious and probably the most widely believed theory is the Ethiopian theory. This is the Aksum tradition. The ark is housed in Aksum, Ethiopia, guarded in the Church of Mary of Zion. Evidence for this, that there's tons of documented evidence within Ethiopian culture. They claim that they have this. And that has been a long, I'm talking about thousands of years tradition in Ethiopia. Ancient Ethiopian Christian tradition, the Kebra Nagast, the ark brought by Menelik, son of Solomon and queen of Sheba. So the Kebra Nagast is a text, an Ethiopian text, which claims that they brought it from the Holy Land. Continuous liturgical significance. Every Ethiopian church has a tablet, an ark symbol, signifying their identity as the keepers of the Ark of the Covenant. Evidence against the Ethiopian theory. Ark is not accessible to outside verification. So we'll watch Graham Hancock talk about his Ark theory of it being in Ethiopia. And the closest he was able to get was to talk with the man who guards it. And it's a particular family. It's a generational calling amongst these Ethiopians. And they are developing cataracts, which is what Graham Hancock believes, that there's some type of radioactive activity exuding off the Ark of the Covenant there, causing them to go blind and get cancer. Now, is that the case? There could be certainly other explanations of that, but it is true. And we're going to watch a video of an Ethiopian actually take a Westerner to the top of where the Ark of the Covenant is supposed to be. They're not allowed to go in, of course, but it's the Ethiopian talking about this tradition in a very real way. Some scholars who claim to see it deny authenticity. There is one scholar who did claim to have seen the Ark of the Covenant in Ethiopia and claimed it was an old, dusty wooden box with some gold on it. Is that true? We don't know. We don't know if he actually ever saw it or not. That's what he claims. And there's tons of wild claims when you search this topic. Scholarly assessment, it's the strongest living tradition. So, again, if I had to put my dollar, or what I think is the most compelling, is probably the Ethiopian narrative. There is no empirical validation of it being the case, but it is certainly the strongest living tradition from anywhere around the point of the ancient period, whether it be the fall of the first temple or the time in which the Ethiopians were pushed off the Elephantine Island there in the Nile River, which caused them to migrate south to inhabit the land that they currently inhabit. So we're going to get into this. I think this is the most interesting, certainly, of the 10 theories. Number 5, hidden somewhere in Jerusalem. This is called the general priest theory. Priests hid the ark in caves/tunnels in and around Jerusalem. This is what Ron Wyatt, the Seventh-day Adventist who claims to have seen the Ark of the Covenant and that they actually took a blood sample and it was of Jesus Christ. Now, he is basically dismissed by every academic, every archaeologist, claims that this is modern Israel, right? We're not talking about ancient Israel. He's talking about modern state of Israel, allowed him to see the Ark of the Covenant because they discovered it, I think he claimed, under the Garden of Gethsemane. And that he saw it and it was the most miraculous thing and it had light shining off of it. But Israel claims that they've never found it. They don't know what he's talking about. This guy's a total quack. He is a Seventh-day Adventist, so him being a quack, there is some evidence for. But this general priest theory claims that Jewish priests just hid it somewhere in Jerusalem. Logical, priests had motive and access, supported indirectly by rabbinic traditions and temple concealment practices. Evidence against, there's no confirmed discovery, highly speculative without any excavation. And so another, historically plausible but lacks any direct evidence. Here's the Billy Carson theory. The Billy Carson theory is that it's actually the Egyptians that created the Ark of the Covenant. It's not the Jews, the whole description in Exodus. No, it's not that. It's that Egypt built this incredible technology. It was some type of ancient technological warfare weapon, and it could perform all these miracles. And that the Jews, when Moses fled Egypt, he stole it from Egypt. That's the Billy Carson theory. And so the ark was moved. For Billy Carson, he believes it goes from Egypt to the Jews, from the Jews back to Egypt, back to Ethiopia. Okay? So this is on the way back from Israel after the destruction of the first temple. It's believed that the ark moved back to Egypt, Elephantine, and then later to Ethiopia. They're kind of the same, again, the same general theory here. Known Jewish presence in Egypt. We do know that there was a Jewish community living on the island of Elephantine during this period. Trade routes between Egypt and Ethiopia. Attempts to reconcile biblical history with Ethiopian claim. Evidence against. There's no ancient record confirming ark transfer. Relies heavily on reconstruction and speculation. Bridge theory, historical speculation, weak direct evidence. There's also a theory that Africans took it to southern Africa. This is called the Southern African theory, or the Limba tradition. Ark preserved among the Limba people. Cultural parallels, carried objects, sacred/dangerous, associated with divine presence, claims of Israelite ancestry. However, the evidence against object does not match the biblical ark, likely symbolic or a derivation tradition. So anthropologically interesting, but no strong evidence that the South African Limba people actually had the ark. Then you have the Kirjath Jearim, the alternative historical development theory. The ark remained or returned to earlier cultic centers rather than Jerusalem. Archaeological attention to Kirjath Jearim suggests complex ark tradition development. Does not explain final disappearance. More about history of the ark, not its location now. Scholarly assessment, important for critical scholarship, weak as a final location. Now, here's another popular theory, is that it's actually in the Vatican archives. We know that the Vatican, they have stolen so many artifacts of history. They have archives that apparently, what we're told, reported, go for miles underground in Vatican City. Ben Shapiro believes that it's either under the Temple Mount or that the Catholic Church has it. So this is actually a theory that many people believe. The Ark of the Covenant is secretly held by the Vatican, possibly in its archives or vaults. Belief among some groups, including Jewish and Christian circles, the argument is that the Romans destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD. The temple treasures depicted on the Arch of Titus. The Vatican inherited the Roman religious artifacts, meaning Rome stole the Ark from the Jews, and the general suspicion of Vatican secrecy then leads people to believe that it's the Vatican that has it underground. However, there's no historical source from antiquity or medieval period that claims this. The Arch of Titus shows a menorah and vessels, but not the Ark of the Covenant. Ark already missing centuries before the Romans, since the Babylonian period. No credible archaeological or documentary evidence, and Vatican archives, while restricted, are not known to contain such claims. Now, another thing, as I'll show you, is that in 2004, there was a Jewish representative of Israel, or he was of their antiques department, or whatever it may be, who was permitted to go down to the Vatican vault and identify any Jewish treasure from the ancient period. And he claims what they allowed him to see, there was not the Ark of the Covenant. They did not have possession of it. But Scholarly assessment, this is a very popular conspiracy theory, not supported by biblical timeline, Roman records, Jewish records, or any sort of archaeological evidence. And then the 10th theory about where it is the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar discovered the Ark under the Temple Mount and transported it to Europe during the Crusades. We just covered the Crusades last week. Evidence for this claim: Templars headquartered on Temple Mount, engaged in excavations, sudden rise in wealth and power, later legends, Scotland, Rosslyn Chapel, France. Evidence against, there's no medieval source that mentions the Ark discovery. The Templar wealth was explained by the banking system and their land ownership. Excavation evidence minimal and unclear. No Ark appears in trial records, papal documents, or contemporary chronicles. So popular and modern speculation, media, and esoteric conspiracy theories, historically unsupported, academically considered pseudo-historical. My final assessment here, strongest historically plausible theories. Obviously, it's probably in Jerusalem. If it exists at all, it makes sense that it was either destroyed during the destruction of the temple, hidden somewhere in Jerusalem, or as I put here, the strongest traditional and theological claims is that Prophet Jeremiah did hide the Ark of the Covenant, and it is somewhere on Mount Nebo, or the Ethiopian tradition is true, and what they're protecting in Aksum is in fact the Ark of the Covenant. All the other theories I don't think are that serious. So if you hear somebody talking about the Ark of the Covenant is in the Vatican, or it's the Knights Templars, just kind of roll your eyes. I doubt it. I highly doubt it. Okay. So now we're going to be getting into all the fun stuff of the videos and covering what people think. Let me catch up here with some of your guys' thoughts on, and where do you guys think is the most logical place? I actually want to create a poll here and see and poll you guys to see where you guys actually think the Ark of the Covenant is. If you think it even exists. I think it's very possible that it no longer exists. Van Whalen throws in 5, says, thoughts on Senator Lynch demanding Hagia Sophia be returned to the Orthodox Church. Thanks for what you do. Yeah, I saw that. There's a candidate running for a Senate seat in South Carolina named Mark Lynch. And one of the things that he said was if he was elected, he would put forth a bill in the U.S. Senate so that Hagia Sophia would be returned back to the Orthodox Christians, would no longer be essentially a mosque and a museum. I think that's really cool. Now, was the U.S. government going to do anything about it? Absolutely not. Even if he passed, if he put up legislation, what are they going to? They're going to approve it. Turkey's a NATO state. Turkey's not going to allow that to happen. And we have, as we talked about with the Kamalists and all their eschatology, I can't see our government putting pressure on Turkey regarding Hagia Sophia. But anyways, it's a nice sentiment. It's movement in the right direction for sure. All right. Oh, what just happened? Hold on. I just lost a... There we go. Twaho throws in 10, says, Revelation 11:19, then the temple of God was opened in heaven, and the ark of his covenant was seen in his temple. Yes. Yes. I mentioned that. Okay. David James Flood gifted a Codal Crew membership. Thank you so much, David James. Guys, if you're feeling generous, gift some Codal Crew memberships. We'd greatly appreciate that. I know the chat would love that as well. Thank you so much, David James Flood. And thank you, Ortho T-Bell, for also gifting a Codal Crew membership. Really appreciate that. Austin DeTulio throws in 10, says Codal taxes. That's right, guys. Send in your taxes. It's time to tithe. Send in your Codal tithes. Thank you very much, Austin. Appreciate that. Jay Hamza throws in 20, says, if the Vatican had the Ark, they would get destroyed by God, since it was known to knock over destroyed Dagon. Yeah. Well, if it still has power, right? I'm skeptical. If you were to even find the Ark of the Covenant, do you guys think it would even still have power? Do you think the Ark of the Covenant be efficacious in any way? What are your guys' thoughts on that? Jay Hamza said, my theory was it went up to heaven since Ark was also a representation of Mary containing Jesus to the incarnation. I could be wrong. That makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. I just don't think if you were to find the physical Ark, do you guys think that it would still have serious power? The Ark is under Ruslan's Rhythm Church behind the bowling alley. You guys are hilarious. I mean, do you guys think it would actually be efficacious and like have power today? I don't think it would have any power. You guys do think? I know it's a lot of people think it may be radioactive. We're going to get into all those theories next. Oh, wow. Mura Takublut just gifted 20 Kodal Crew memberships. Wow, bro. Thank you very, very much for that. Thank you for that. Really appreciative. Wow. I'm just seeing that in the chat. Thank you so much, brother. That's a huge gift. Huge gift. Thank you for that support. Yeah, Nat says, I don't believe it has power today. I don't think it does. I don't think it does. All right, so let's get into all the other stuff I want to show you guys, because here's some of the cool, juicy stuff. So did you guys know that the CIA claims that they found the Ark of the Covenant? Yes. So here is a document. This is a Daily Mail article, but this was all from 2025. Secret CIA files claim Ark of the Covenant has been found. The location of the chest believed to contain the Ten Commandments. Oh my gosh, I can't speak. Let me start over. Secret CIA files claim Ark of the Covenant has been found. The location of a chest believed to contain the Ten Commandments has long been a mystery, but CIA documents claim the Ark of the Covenant has been found. Oh, what reassurance. According to the Bible, the Ark of the Covenant was built by the Israelites shortly after they fled Egypt around the 13th century BC. Moses then placed the Ten Commandments inside. The CIA conducted experiments in the 1980s with individuals who claimed they could perceive information about distant objects. So this is called remote viewing. So they had remote viewers look for the Ark of the Covenant. Viewer number 32 was given coordinates to locate a target, and they described the Ark of the Covenant hiding in the Middle East. Oh, well, that's very specific. The Middle East. Some historians believe the Ark of the Covenant was originally kept inside the Holy of Holies, the innermost chamber of the ancient Temple of Jerusalem, before it disappeared during the Babylonian sack of Jerusalem in 586. There's also a legend that the artifact was taken to Ethiopia and now resides in a local church. Evidence that the chest existed has yet to be found, but the CIA document declassified in 2000 claims it was discovered in 1988. The target is a container. The container has another container inside it. The document states the target is fashioned of wood, gold, and silver and is decorated with a six-winged angel. The remote reviewer continued to say that the coffin-shaped object is located somewhere in the Middle East and saw people in the area speaking Arabic. The remote reviewer, however, was not told that they were searching for the lost covenant, but before the experiment began. According to biblical history, the sacred gold-covered wooden chest was constructed sometime around 1445 BC. But the CIA document, a remnant of the mysterious Project Sunstreak, suggests the U.S. government has known where the Ark is for years. In the 1970s and 80s, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA, and several other intelligence agencies, including the CIA, employed individuals alleged to have paranormal capabilities. Now, this is all tied with Project Stargate. I covered this with Jay Dyer. We did a huge stream on it. As means of acquiring intelligence about distant events. Project Stargate was hiring remote viewers to discover mysteries and solve crimes for the intelligence agencies. Project Sunstreak attempted to use psychics known as remote viewers to gather intelligence on targets using only coordinates. Remote viewers are supposedly able to project their consciousness beyond their bodies and observe far-off locations. These again, are the documents. The ark is hidden underground, dark and wet, where all aspects of the location of the target. And so, there was like, what am I looking at? He said, the document describes the training exercise conducted on December 5th of 1988. The psychic projected their consciousness beyond their body to search for the sacred artifact, writing down his observations as they went. He wrote, it was bone-chilling, Hooper said. This target was located somewhere in the Middle East, as the language spoken to the individuals is Arabic. So you guys get it. And then it says, there's an aspect of spirituality, information, lessons, and historical knowledge far beyond what we now know. The target is protected by entities and can only be opened now by those who are authorized to do so. This container will not/cannot be opened until the time is deemed correct. The psychic goes on to say that when the time comes, the mechanics of the lock system will be found to be fairly simple, and that anyone who attempts to open the container by prying or striking will be destroyed by the container's protectors through the use of a power unknown to us. And then it gets a little bit into the Ethiopia stuff, and yeah. So, anyways, where did the CIA claim that they found it? Somewhere in the Middle East. And here is Trump's replica. You guys seen the replica that Trump has? Why does he have a replica of the Ark of the Covenant? Well, this is a Jewish article that I found. Why does Donald Trump have a replica of the Ark of the Covenant at Mar-a-Lago? Well, according to this article, reason why is that the full-scale golden replica displayed at Mar-a-Lago is more than just an art piece, you see. It's a statement. Built to exact biblical specifications, this ark was designed to retrace the steps of the original, visiting Shiloh, Jericho, and Jerusalem. Some even wanted to bring it into Gaza as a spiritual weapon in Israel's war. But here's what most people miss. No man, no nation, and no world leader can wield the ark's power unless they are under the authority of the kingdom of David. Now, we've already talked about the Judaizing of Trump, his Zionism. And as I said, from an Orthodox perspective, the Ark of the Covenant is not that interesting. I mean, Christ is more interesting than the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is just an object typifying who the incarnated God is. But again, I don't think Trump believes in Jesus, and Trump is very much infatuated with Jewish lore and history. It makes sense that he would have an exact replica. And so this goes on to talk about the importance of the Ark of the Covenant, that when the kingdom is restored, talking about the Greater Israel Project, the Third Temple, the world won't resist. It will rush to join Israel. Week by week, nation by nation, leaders will recognize what has been true all along. There is no legitimate global authority except the Empire of David, meaning the Jews. No more fake governments, no more corrupt rulers pretending divine right, no more nations warring under false banners. Yes. Yes. So anyways, this is very much in favor of Trump having the replica as signifying the absolute power of the kingdom of David and that their resurgence, which is on its way in biblical history. Now, here is a Jew who is a archaeologist in Israel. This is him claiming, being asked, where is the Ark of the Covenant? He claims it's in the Temple Mount. This is his explanation.
I talked to somebody that was doing a documentary, and they said there's three places the Ark of the Covenant could be. Mm-hmm. One is Ethiopia.
That's right.
I think the other one is in Saudi Arabia.
I think he means Iraq. The other theory is that it's in Babylon. Unless where they think in Babylon they had it, it's somewhere in Saudi Arabia or they took it. I have not heard the Saudi Arabian theory.
And the other one is where you're digging. What is the thought on the Ark of the Covenant?
Here's what I could tell you that the Bible says. 2 Chronicles chapter 35. King Josiah is ruling in Jerusalem. And this is, not that long after the Assyrian Empire nearly conquers Jerusalem. They're the ones who exile the kingdom of Israel, the 10 lost tribes. They're gone. They conquer almost the entirety of the kingdom of Judah during the time of King Hezekiah. Jerusalem almost falls. By the act of God, there's a miracle, and Jerusalem is spared. And Josiah comes along and he says, you know what? We can't have our future plan be based off of miracles. We almost lost the Ark of the Covenant. We need to make sure that never happens again. And so in 2 Chronicles 35, he calls upon the Levites to carry the ark, it says, one last time. And what's believed is that the ark was then put into hiding. And
now, did you pick up which theory this is? This is the general priest theory. Now, I don't know if he's going to, because the king Josiah hiding it, that was part of the general priest theory of Josiah hiding it. I think, now he ends up claiming that he thinks it's probably in the Temple Mount or somewhere in Jerusalem, but just note which theory of the location of the ark that he is choosing. Now, he obviously has a dog in this fight. He is Jewish. He does want to build the third temple. He believes that this is a necessary historical item.
And there are all sorts of passages and subterranean tunnels and caverns beneath the Temple Mount, some of them even in the city of David, where the Ark of the Covenant could have been secreted away to be, brought out at some point in the future. Do I personally think it's in Egypt or Saudi Arabia or Ethiopia? No, I actually think it's in Jerusalem. And I was asked once, I was giving a tour.
Boy, if it's under the temple, boy, that's trouble.
Well, I mean, it's trouble, and maybe it's...
Maybe God will protect. God would. I saw the documentary. You saw that documentary where they opened it up and the people melted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it could be.
Yeah,
really
you don't want to
bad.
touch it. It's you see that in the Bible. Also, you don't want to touch it. But I was asked. I was with someone and his granddaughter, and the granddaughter, about 14 years old. She says, "Well, are you guys looking to find the Ark of the Covenant?" So I said, "Well, I'm only now speaking for myself and not for the archaeologists or anyone else." But I said, "Well, no." She says, "Why not?" I said, "Well, what would you do if you found it?" She says, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, I'll tell you what we wouldn't do." I said, "The Ark of the Covenant is not going to go in the Museum of the Bible. It's not going to go in the British Museum. It's not going to go in the Israel Museum. You're not going to go and take selfies with the Ark of the Covenant. There's one place, and one place alone, where the Ark of the Covenant would go. I believe, if and when that place is ever ready for it, you'll find the Ark of the Covenant. But until that day comes, there's no need for it. It's not a gimmick. It's not a prop. It's not like a weapon of some kind. And so when
they build the third temple, the Ark of the Covenant will appear. Here is Michael Knowles asking Ben Shapiro his thoughts on the Ark of the Covenant. So first one, Jewish archaeologist, director of international affairs. He claims general priest theory, somewhere hidden in Jerusalem, very potential it's under the Temple Mount, that when they build the third temple, the only place for it to be is inside the third temple, and that when they build it, it will come. Basically, it's a field of dreams theology. So here's Ben Shapiro. Here's the next one.
So the Ark of the Covenant is likely hidden away at the Vatican or at the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion.
There have been two major going theories in the Jewish community as to where the Ark of the Covenant is. One of them is that it's buried in the Temple Mount somewhere. The Jews saw the Romans coming and they're like, we are squirreling this away, and the easiest place to put this is like somewhere underneath here, which has been a going theory for a very long time. And then the secondary theory is that you guys have it.
At the Vatican?
It's at the Vatican.
Really?
Yeah, because there have been long-standing rumors that the Vatican inherited much of the wealth of the Roman Empire, and so after the fall of Judea, a lot of that stuff ended up being kept by the Catholic Church.
Wow. Because it's like you go into the museums and you're like, oh, there's that Raphael painting. But like, I don't know, man, you got the Ark of the Covenant. You're probably putting that in like the special locker.
If somebody were to have it, the Catholics aren't a horrible bet, considering that when you go through Rome, one of my favorite things is where it's just like a giant Egyptian obelisk, and then boom, stick a cross on it. It's like, this is ours now, bitches.
The Ark of the...
Gosh, I can hardly listen to Ben Shapiro, but he highlighted my point. The two main Jewish theories, the Catholic Church has it or it's the Temple Mount. Here is a theory debunking the idea that the Vatican Church has it.
Theory is that the temple treasures went to the Vatican, and Israel had a long battle with the Vatican. Do you have the second temple treasures? And in 2004, the Israeli Antiquities Authority actually looked inside the Vatican vaults to see if the second temple treasures, the menorah, the other items like the trumpets, to see are they in the vault. They found nothing. Another theory is that the temple treasures went to the Vatican.
So what it basically said, it's hard to hear with all that music underneath. I hate when they play music so loud. Basically, the Vatican allowed a Jewish scholar, a representative of the state of Israel, to go to their archive, their underground archives, find any Jewish relic that they wanted to keep that the Catholic Church had taken. He did not document anything of major significance, or certainly not the Ark of the Covenant. Now, probably the most popular myth regarding Ethiopia has been put forth by author Graham Hancock. And I got to say, back when I was in my New Age psychedelics phase, I loved Graham Hancock. I read, I have his book somewhere. I'm not sure where it is. Anyways, I had the book Fingerprints of the Gods, talking about, astrotheology and sidereal time and all that different stuff, redating the date of the Sphinx. He's been famous on finding megaliths, Göbekli Tepe and Turkey, all that different stuff. But his first major investigative work had to do with the Ark of the Covenant. Now, he eventually meets his wife in Ethiopia, as an Ethiopian wife, and it's this book, The Sign and the Seal. And so I'm going to play this section of him putting forth the argument for the Ethiopian theory.
You wrote a book called The Sign and the Seal.
I did.
About the Ark of the Covenant.
Indeed so, and that was my first venture into what shall we call historical mystery.
Mm-hmm.
And in Ethiopia, I came across this really quite by chance. I found myself in the city of Aksum in Tigray in northern Ethiopia. Mm-hmm. And there were some strange processions going on and wonderful music and dancing and rituals being performed. And I asked, what's this all about? And they said, well, we have the Ark of the Covenant here. And these ceremonials are in honor of the Ark of the Covenant. And you've got the Ark of the Covenant here? I'd just seen Raiders of the Lost Ark. You've got the Ark of the Covenant here? Where? And they said, well, it's in that enclosure. And there's a huge religious enclosure in the heart of Aksum, which contains a 16th century church of St. Mary of...
Which I'm going to show you a video of. After we get through him talking about this, I'm going to show you what he's talking about.
Zion, and beside it a little chapel. And it's in that chapel that the Ethiopians claim the Ark is kept. And this is not a minor issue for Ethiopians. This is a very major issue for them. It's fundamental to Ethiopian culture. It's something that a lot of people don't understand. And it's kind of odd because the Ark of the Covenant is a pre-Christian relic, and Ethiopia is largely a Christian country. Why is Ethiopian Christianity, which is very Old Testament in its form, very un-New Testament in its form, why is it... But
I love that. It's very Old Testament. You mean it's liturgical? You mean it's sacramental? I think what he means, the delineation between Old Testament Christianity and New Testament, I think he's thinking of like the evangelical boomer rock band celebration as like the New Testament Christianity or something. It's like, no, what's going on in Ethiopia, Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity, is very much in line with liturgical, sacramental, first millennial worship. That's exactly what Orthodoxy is.
Still calling itself Christianity. Why is it venerating a pre-Christian, non-Christian relic that belongs to Old Testament times? And so I began to do my own investigation. And my own investigation included a lot of time spent with the indigenous Ethiopian Jews. This is something, again, that's not widely known. But there has been...
Lost tribe.
Going back into remote prehistory, a Judaic community in Ethiopia. And in Ethiopia, they're known as the Falashas. They refer to themselves as the Beta Israel, the House of Israel. And they say that their ancestors brought the Ark of the Covenant to Ethiopia. And it happened in this way. That first of all, their ancestors lived on an island in the Nile. And they lived there for some hundreds of years. Well, that's the first thing I checked. Was there ever a Jewish community on an island in the Nile? Yes.
This is the Elephantine Island that we were talking about. The theory that this particular community lived on this island, acquired it, and eventually migrated southward to their present-day location in Aksum.
There was. On the island of Elephantine, opposite the modern city of Aswan, in Upper Egypt around 650 BC. The general story is that the Ark was stolen by the Babylonians about 60 years later in 587 BC. But the Babylonians have no records of the Ark of the Covenant. They were ferocious bureaucrats, and they kept detailed records of everything they stole from the Temple of Jerusalem. Didn't include the Ark.
And this is what most scholars say because of, again, the sort of beginnings of bureaucracy is associated with Babylon. But again, kind of funny association, Tower of Babel, all that different stuff. But they did take incredible records. So it's not just his opinion saying that. That is the general academic perspective.
The Ark logically was gone before the Babylonians ever got there. And suddenly the fallacious story of their ancestors living on an island in the Nile starts to make sense. And then I go in further into it, and I discover that around 400 BC, there was conflict between that Jewish community and the Egyptians. The conflict was because the island of Elephantine was dedicated to the god Khnum. And the Egyptian god Khnum is a ram-headed deity. And the Jewish community on that island were sacrificing rams. And again, this is historically established. They were thrown out. They were driven out. There's no evidence that they were massacred. They were just driven out of that island. And that's where it connects with the fallacious stories, that their ancestors were driven out of that island, and they then followed the Nile River system. They did not go north through a hostile Egypt. They went south. And the Nile, of course, divides into two branches, the Blue Nile and the White Nile. The White Nile rises in Uganda. The Blue Nile rises in Lake Tana in Ethiopia. And Lake Tana in Ethiopia is the center, the absolute center of the area in which the Ethiopian Jews live.
Wow.
And suddenly it all began to make sense.
Interesting.
You know, and could be stood up as a reasonable. I never saw the object that is called the Ark itself, and maybe that's just as well, because the guardians of the Ark get sick and die very, very rapidly.
Yeah, you said that. You said that people come out with burns on their faces.
They typically get cataracts. They get blinded by cataracts, which is something that happens with radiation damage.
But your narrative of the Ark of the Covenant would preclude the Templars guarding it because they were later.
Well, no, it wouldn't actually.
Okay.
In this sense.
So we're going to get more into the Templar theory in a few more videos, but this is Graham putting forth his possibility of the Templar connection to the Ark of the Covenant.
That I came across a great Scottish traveller called James Bruce of Kinnaird.
Okay.
And James Bruce...
And this is who James Bruce is. I already pulled it up for you guys. He was a Scottish travel writer who physically confirmed the source of the Blue Nile, which is exactly what Graham's going to get into, because when he was talking about the fork of the Nile moving southward, there's the White Nile and the Blue Nile, and the Blue Nile is the one that goes to the lake in northern Ethiopia. James Bruce was one of the first Europeans to confirm the source of the Blue Nile. He spent more than a dozen years in North and East Africa, and in 1770 became the first European to trace and document the course of the Nile by following it upstream from Egypt through Sudan to its origins in the Blue Nile in Ethiopia. So that is who he's referring to right now.
Wrote a book in the 1780s or 90s called Travels to Discover the Source of the Nile. And in which he claimed to have discovered the source of the Blue Nile in or near Lake Tana. What's puzzling about that is he already knew of a Portuguese priest who'd put that together 60 years before. And James Bruce had a powerful interest in the Ark of the Covenant and was present in Axum during the ceremony of Timkat, when replicas of the Ark of the Covenant are brought out. And I began to get very interested in his story. And I became convinced, although I couldn't prove it, that he had been a Freemason. And that it was his Freemasonic interest that had taken him to Ethiopia. Let's not forget that James Bruce brought something back from Ethiopia. He brought back the Book of Enoch.
Wow.
We would not have the Book of Enoch if it hadn't been for that Scottish traveller getting a copy of it written in the Ethiopian sacred language of deeds and having it then translated into other languages. That's an
ancient alien abduction story if I've ever heard
Well,
one.
yeah, the Book of Enoch was a lost book but it had been preserved in Ethiopia. And James Bruce found it and brought it back. Brought it back to Europe. I thought, what could have motivated him, and could he have been a Freemason? And I began to look into this, and I couldn't find evidence for it. I went to his grave, which is in a little churchyard in Scotland near Falkirk, And I found that the grave was in a state of disrepair, but the obelisk that had stood over the grave was lying on its side in the car park. And it was clear that something was going on. So I went to the keeper of the church and I asked him about this. And he said, oh, yes, we're restoring the grave of James Bruce right now, and the obelisk will be re-erected there. And I said, who's funding this? And he said, well, it's the Earl of Elgin. Oh, how interesting. Those were the days when you could pick up the phone and call an earl, and I did that in probably 1990 when we were researching the Sign and the Seal. I called the Broomhill Estate where the Earl of Elgin lives, and he answered the phone. And I said, look, this may seem very odd to you, but I'm a journalist and I'm investigating the story of James Bruce of Kinnaird, and I understand you have an interest in him. Can I come and talk to you about him? And he said gruffly, I'll give you half an hour. He gave me 5 hours, and my wife Santha and I went to his place, his estate, and we sat down and talked to him. And at the end of it, rather nervously, I said, look, I've been working on this theory that James Bruce was a Freemason, but I can't stand it up. I can't prove it. He said, my dear boy, of course he was a Freemason. And he gave me the lodge, the Kilwinning Lodge number 2 in Edinburgh that James Bruce was a member of. And more than that, he was a speculative Freemason who was interested in the esoteric side of Freemasonry. And so his journey to Ethiopia, I think, was very strongly connected to the Ark of the Covenant. Now we come to the Templars. And the Templar connection with Freemasonry, and the fact that the speculation that I put in the Sign and the Seal that Templars had gone to Ethiopia in search of the Ark of the Covenant. There was a time when an Ethiopian prince, whose name was Lalibela, was an exile in Jerusalem, and that was during the Crusades, when the Templars held the whole Temple Mount. The Al-Aqsa Mosque was their palace. The Temple Mount was there at exactly the time that an Ethiopian prince exiled was present in Jerusalem. I speculated that he tipped the Templars off that the Ark of the Covenant was in Ethiopia. And weirdly, Lalibela then went back to Ethiopia with a strange force of people who installed him on the throne of Ethiopia, who sound like foreigners, not Ethiopians. And then he created these incredible churches, which are the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, one of which has a Templar cross painted on its ceiling and an image of the Al-Aqsa Mosque with a cross on top of it, which only happened when the Templars were using it as their palace. So I began to see a possible connection here, that the Templars did have a long-term interest in this object, that they had learnt some intelligence about it during their stay in Jerusalem, and that they'd followed that intelligence to Ethiopia and put Lalibela back on the throne and been involved in the construction of his amazing churches. All speculation, of course.
That's fascinating.
But interesting
speculation, but you've made a lot of pretty compelling connections.
So that is Graham Hancock's theory about the presence of the Ark of the Covenant in Ethiopia, connecting the history of the Ethiopian Jews, connecting it with the migration of that community to the present location in Oxum, where it's believed that the Ark of the Covenant is. And then, as he said, connecting with Labella regarding the Crusades, him taking power in Ethiopia, creating these churches that are indicative of the same time period. So we're gonna get back to the Templar theory, the Vatican theory, all that stuff. I got more videos on that in just a minute. So the next thing I wanted to dive into was a full accounting so you could see what the Ethiopians believe in their tradition from their perspective. This is a video I found. I hope it doesn't get taken down. It's from Discovery Turbo, but the host is able to speak with a local Ethiopian and is given quote unquote proof on the existence of the Ark of the Covenant. So, and guys, if you appreciate this type of content, you appreciate these streams and these deep dives into various topics, please support my work with a super chat, either be on Streamlabs, Dono Chat, or here on YouTube. We're trying to reach the 30 super chat goal. If you are able to contribute, would greatly appreciate it.
I'm off to meet with a new researcher with another compelling theory, that the Ark made its way out of the city before the Babylonian invasion. Not only out of the city, but to another continent, Africa. of famine, but in reality, a place of bounty and historical riches beyond compare. A true melting pot of cultures and religion. Ethiopia has been the stage for some of the most mysterious kingdoms in history. One of them had its capital in the northern city of Axum. I'm here to ask local historian Sisay Sagai why this dusty city is ground zero for modern seekers of the lost Ark.
I want to understand how the Ark comes from Jerusalem, from the Temple of Solomon. How does it get to Ethiopia?
Queen of Sheba. She's the queen of the Axumite kingdom. Queen Sheba traveled to Jerusalem to meet King Solomon. During her stay in Jerusalem, they become two lovers. And they have a baby called Menelik. And Menelik grew here in Axum.
The lore says that when Menelik grew to adulthood, he returned to his father in Jerusalem. There, a high priest had a vision that Menelik should bring the Ark back to Ethiopia. He took the Ark from Solomon's temple and brought it here to the kingdom of Axum.
The Bible is silent on this, right? The Bible doesn't tell this story.
Everything is mentioned in the Ethiopian Kibernegest.
Kibernegest.
Yes, this is the Ethiopian holy book. It's like a Bible. I can show you the evidence the Ark is here in Axum.
Sisay takes me to just outside of the city to see one of the oldest churches in Africa.
We're going up there.
Yes.
The Abba Pantaleon, which reportedly contains ancient manuscripts related to the Ark. As befits a holy place, the church is perched on Axum's highest point.
Sisay, why can't the power of the Ark reveal itself closer to sea level?
The Ark works many mysteries.
Whew, what a view. Worth the walk.
The documents we seek are kept in a sacred chamber of the monastery, and the priests are kind enough to bring them into the light.
So this is one of the old book here in this monastery. It is about 1,600 years old.
Sisay reads me the crucial passage about the Ark. This is the part. It says Solomon and Queen Sheba, that they made together.
Does it explicitly say that the Ark came here?
Yes, this is what they explained to us.
It's incredible. Thank you for showing this.
To the people of Ethiopia, the scriptures of the Kebra-Negest are taken as gospel, but it isn't only the locals who believe that the Ark is here in Axum. Sisay and I hike back to town to meet his friend and my next contact, biblical investigator Bob Kornuk.
How are you, man? Nice to meet you.
Bob has been coming to Ethiopia for nearly 2 decades investigating the Ark, and he's formed tight connections with the community here.
I first came here about 19 years ago to disprove that the Ark was here. But I started talking to the monks, looking at evidence, and it all fit. The more I come here, the more confident I get that their story has merit. They claim that the Ark, the actual Ark, and the 10 Commandments are not far from here.
In town?
In town, in St. Mary's of Zion Church.
Now, does anybody get to go in and actually see it?
Only one man gets to go in and see it, the guardian of the Ark.
And who is the guardian?
He's appointed by the church. He's considered the only one holy enough to be in front of the Ark of the Covenant. He lives in there, and he'll live in there to the day he dies.
And if I go up to the guardian with a checkbook, I'll give you $1 million. Doesn't do anything.
Not any amount of money will ever gain you access.
I don't have $1 million check to offer. I work in cable. But if they believe the Ark is there, I have to try and see it.
Looks like we just got flagged. YouTube just got me. Don't go anywhere if they take the stream down. Just stay there for a second. Stay there for a second. If the stream goes black, just stay there. It'll pop right back up. They take me down for 30 seconds. Oh boy, that's what I hate. I saw Jim Bob got hit watching Tucker Carlson videos. It's crazy, man. The YouTube channels, they will flag you for this video. Flagged for what? This video, I just got a warning on YouTube saying we've detected video in your stream belonging to someone else. You may be temporarily blocked, is what it just said. So we're going to change photos here, background, so that... Oh, gosh. I was hoping that would work better, but hopefully they don't hit me with the next ones. I got more videos I want to show you guys. Yeah, everyone else is allowed to do it, just not right-wingers. I swear, it's like every other stream you get flagged for stuff. So, okay, it's still saying that I may be temporarily blocked. But it seems like we're all here. So anyways, this video goes forward and it talks a little bit about, they go to St. Mary of Zion Church and they talk a little bit more about the legend of the Ark and the probability, and that American scholar who's there who claims that it is actually present. Now, you guys mentioned something in the chat that I think is really important. If they actually had the Ark of the Covenant, does any of us think that Israel would allow them to keep it? If they actually had the Ark of the Covenant in Ethiopia, Mossad, Shin Bet, the Israelis would absolutely have it right now. So, I don't know. I think the Ethiopian theory is the most interesting theory by far. I think it's the most interesting, and in many ways it's the most compelling given the tradition in Ethiopia. But if they actually have it, okay, we just got the flag taken down. Woo. Okay, stream will not be taken down. We're good. We're good to go. YouTube has given us the go-ahead. But if Ethiopia actually had it, does any of you guys think that Israel would not just steal it back, especially given the fact that they think this is an essential element for the construction of the Third Temple? At least once the Third Temple is complete, they want the Ark of the Covenant to be present. Yeah, I'm not convinced that Israel would just let them have it. I don't know. It's very interesting. In fact, I want to pull up the poll right now and get your guys' thoughts. Where do you think, where is the Ark? Where is the Ark? First one we'll put is Jerusalem. Next we'll put Vatican. Then we'll put Ethiopia. And then fourth, lost to history. Based on so far, what you guys have learned so far, where do you guys think that the Ark of the Covenant is? Van Whalen says, BB would say Ethiopia has nukes if they had it. Yeah, he absolutely would. He'd been saying that they've been on the precipice of getting nukes for 1,600 years. As long as that sacred book they have claims they have the Ark of the Covenant. Thank you very much. Sarah from Rosario throws in 10, says, Christ is risen. Truly he is risen. Appreciate you covering this. God bless. Well, thanks, man. I thought it was an interesting topic. I have never done a deep dive on the Ark of the Covenant or participated in this conversation before. We've done one on Atlantis, talking about the possibility of where Atlantis is, but never one here. So what are you guys thinking in the chat? Let's see. Majority of people say lost to history. That's my opinion. That is my opinion as well. Yeah, 60% of the chat thinks that the Ark of the Covenant is lost to history. And then it's a tie between Jerusalem and Ethiopia. Well, now Ethiopia took over at 18%. So we're going to leave that running, guys. Vote. I want to hear what you guys think on where is the Ark of the Covenant. And we'll get into some of the next stuff. Guys, we got a super chat goal of 30. If you can help me get 5 more, at least halfway there, I'd greatly appreciate it. We could move on. I got this one is a gentleman who just wrote a book. He was just on the Sean Ryan podcast, who claims to be an expert on Ethiopia, the Book of Enoch, the Ark of the Covenant, and stuff like that. He is a Protestant Christian. It's interesting to hear his perspective because he dismisses the entire Ethiopian narrative. Then we'll get into Billy Carson and his claim. And then this is an interesting video claiming a different theory that touches on what we've already talked about. And then this is a Templar Grand Master explains the Ark of the Covenant and what he thinks it is. So I got all that I still want to get into, guys. Can you do a little bit of grifting here? Help me get the stream caught up, get some super chats going. Let me check Streamlabs real quick, see if anybody sent anything in. All right, I'm going to play this video right here. This is of Jeremiah Johnston. He was just on the Sean Ryan podcast, if you guys are familiar with that. He was just on the Sean Ryan podcast, and he is totally dismissive of Ethiopia having the Ark of the Covenant. So I'll play this one real quick.
Is there some rumors that the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia?
There's a huge fascination with where it is right now, and I put zero credibility into thinking that the Ethiopian church has it.
What is the Ark of the Covenant?
The Ark was the meeting place of the people of God with Yahweh himself. One day a year on the Day of Atonement, the high priest would make atonement on the mercy seat. The Ark of the Covenant held the 10 Commandments, Aaron's rod that budded. This was all symbolically pointed to Jesus of Nazareth.
There's a lot of fear of opening it.
We should have no fear of it. Jesus is our Savior. All it did was point to Jesus. Jesus fulfilled it all. If we found it, I would pop it open in a second. I'd sit on top of it. I believe that's why we don't even have it anymore. It's pointless at this point because Jesus fulfilled it in his death, burial, and resurrection.
You think they're going to find it?
No.
Is there some...
And I have to agree with him. As we already said, I don't think it has any more magical or mystical powers anymore. I don't believe that it is theologically significant in any way. And it probably is just totally lost to history. Here's Billy Carson, Billy Carson's idea and explanation of what is the Ark of the Covenant.
What is the Ark of the Covenant?
If you look into biblical texts, for example, there was this ark that Moses stole. He had this box. He claimed it was given to him by God, but I think he stole it from the Egyptians. That's why they fled after him.
An ark.
Yeah, so it's this box with these cherubims on it, but these cherubims are really... It's really a capacitor. It generates a lot of electricity. Inside of this box is something that has so much radiation, that's what it looks like there, that you had to have on specific type of clothing, which is well described even in the Bible. Rubber boots, gloves, this type of suit with this breastplate of metal on it. This is all to prevent the radiation poisoning. When somebody didn't have it on in the Bible and they touched the ark, they would become very sick. Their hair would fall out. Their nose would bleed. Their eyes would bleed. Their fingernails would fall off. Radiation sickness. This thing was generating some type of radiation power, some type of a generator of power of some sort. And it was connected to the Great Pyramid. It was in that.
What is the Ark?
Everything's connected to the Great Pyramid. We was Kangs. We was Kangs, y'all. And then Randall Carlson, he believes that it caused objects to levitate.
No, you cannot dismiss this as coincidence anymore. I think levitation was probably a scientific reality to ancient cultures. Interestingly, the stories about the Ark of the Covenant, it was sheathed in gold, and it would have been extremely heavy. It would have been very difficult for people to lift. Interestingly, that, the tribe that was the only tribe that was allowed of the 12 tribes to actually transport and move the Ark of the Covenant, do you know which tribe that was?
I do not.
The Levites.
The Levites.
Levites. Levity. No, you can...
So, Levites, levity, levitation, he thinks that's all tied together. Not totally convinced. Andrew Palamas throws in 5, says, since Jesus is the new temple and the Theotokos fulfilled the type of the ark, isn't it reasonable to think the ark was destroyed? It depends on who had it. So if Jews had it or if they hid it, the most common Jewish theory is that they hid it and buried it underground somewhere in Jerusalem or the Temple Mount. So even though I agree with you, Christ already fulfilled the law, the Theotokos and the church is the new Ark of the Covenant. The Word has already dwelled in the flesh. the ark has no power anymore, but I don't think the Jews would have destroyed it because the Jews reject who Jesus is. And if we just watched the first video that I showed you tonight, was one of the Jewish archaeologists in Israel talking about why it is so important and that he believes when the third temple is built, the Ark of the Covenant will show up. So are they just going to create a new one? You know, very possible. I would not put it past Israel to just make a new Ark of the Covenant. So was it destroyed? I think it's reasonable that historically it was destroyed. I think that's very reasonable. You know, I think the Ethiopian narrative, as I said, is the most compelling, but I don't think the ark has any magical powers. Nobody lets, you know, the one holy figure that's allowed to guard the ark doesn't let anybody see it. I don't know. One guy claims that he did see it. It was just a wooden box. It was an old wooden box. But we don't know if he actually did or not. I highly doubt that he did. Neo-Narcus throws in 5, says, are we schizomaxing with these theories and shorts, boys? See, from an Orthodox perspective, it just doesn't matter. It's like not significant at all. I mean, it's amazing how many, these videos are so popular too. This has 5 million views, the Y files. They may try to flag me for this one too, but this is the Y files trying to explain what happened to the ark. And he's presenting a very interesting theory based on the copper scrolls that I told you, the copper scrolls that were discovered at Qumran. Qumran's in the West Bank near the Dead Sea. That's why the Dead Sea Scrolls are called the Dead Sea Scrolls. They're found in a cave in Qumran right next to the Dead Sea. One of the scrolls, the only scroll not on papyri, was written on copper. And it is that scroll that claims to describe the contents that were taken out of the temple.
Against the city with a very great discomfiture, and he smote the men of the city, both small and great, and hemorrhages broke out upon them.
Break out of hemorrhages, huh? They make it burns. Then illness swept through the city. That sounds like radiation sickness. The Philistines believed that the ark was cursed and moved it to another city, Gath. But the tumors and sickness continued. Then they moved it to Ekron. The tumors continued. Finally, the Philistines sent the ark back to the Israelites, along with gold and incense.
They sent therefore and gathered together all the lords of the Philistines, and they said, send away the ark of the God of Israel, and let it go back to its own place.
When the ark was traveling, it was set up in a portable sanctuary called a tabernacle. This was an elaborate tent made of woven fabrics and gold. The ark was always shrouded. It was too dangerous to be gazed upon. When the ark was returned from the Philistines, some men got curious and looked at the ark when they weren't supposed to. 70 of them were struck down by the Lord.
If Indy says don't look, you really shouldn't look.
Good advice. For a time, the Israelites experienced a period of peace and stability. But the ark remained a powerful symbol of the Israelites' covenant with God and their faith. The ark was eventually moved to the innermost chamber of the temple. The ark...
Okay, I'm going to skip forward to the theory about Qumran.
And then suddenly, it's gone. In 587 BC, after a 30-month siege, the city of Jerusalem fell to the Babylonian army. The Babylonians then looted the temple's treasures and burned the building to the ground. The Babylonians kept meticulous records of everything they took from Jerusalem. And even though the Ark of the Covenant was stored in the temple, it wasn't on the list. And that's where the Ark disappears from history. So if the Babylonians didn't take it, who did? And where is it today? Some people think the answer lies on the infamous Copper Scroll. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, most were made of papyrus and contained religious stories not found in the Bible. But one of the scrolls was very different. It was made of copper. According to Ark hunter Jim Barfield, the Copper Scroll does not contain the Word of God.
The Copper Scroll is not a Bible story. On that copper, they have hammered instructions to find treasures from the Temple of Solomon, which I believe includes the Ark of the Covenant.
Barfield believes that while the Babylonians were attacking, the treasures of the Temple of Solomon were quietly taken out of the city. Among those treasures was the Ark of the Covenant. The book of 2 Maccabees says that the prophet Jeremiah did exactly this. Underneath the Temple Mount is a vast network of tunnels. But even though miles of tunnels have been explored, none were ever found that would serve as an escape route from the temple. But in 2007, that would change. a new tunnel was found that runs from the Temple Mount to the Kidron Valley, well outside the city. From Kidron, the Ark could have been taken to a town called Qumran. This also happens to be the place where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. The Copper Scroll lists 64 places in and around Qumran where treasures might have been hidden. One place is described as steps, east, 40 cubits long. And buried under those steps, according to the Copper Scroll, is over 1,000 pounds of silver. Barfield found the steps. Then he found another location that describes a well and a courtyard. Under the courtyard is buried 33 tons of polished gold. He found the courtyard. He found the well. Jim Barfield brought his evidence to the local authorities and asked permission to dig at the site, but he was refused. Later, he went back with a metal detector tuned to look for gold and silver. When he got near the location, the metal detector went crazy. Again, he asked permission to dig. Again, he was refused. Barfield was certain that there was a third site containing even more treasure, including the Ark. Using the first two locations as waypoints, he drew a straight line to a cave in a nearby hill. The cave appeared to be sealed shut, but intentionally. Barfield then took a stone sample from the cave entrance and had it tested in a lab. The results were interesting.
I decided that I would take a sample of this stone and send it off to a lab in Skokie, Illinois, where we had it examined, and they find that it is man-made mortar in a common mixture and formula from that time frame. Why would somebody seal a random hill with concrete?
When he took the metal detector to the sealed cave, it registered 5 times the amount of metal that was detected at Qumran. Jim Barfield is firmly convinced that this is the location of the Ark of the Covenant. To this day, permission to dig has not been granted. But many Ark historians believe that if the Ark was in Qumran, that it's not there anymore. They believe the Ark was taken by a Catholic military order called the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, more commonly known as the Knights Templar. During the Crusades, a new Catholic military order emerged, the Knights Templar. From the very beginning, the Templars were known for their secrecy and their mystery. They were also shrewd when it came to finance and politics. They convinced both the Pope and the city leaders of Jerusalem that they would protect Christian pilgrims making the journey to the Holy City. But as soon as the Knights Templar established their headquarters on the Temple Mount, they started digging. And they weren't looking for treasure. The Knights were obsessed with religious relics, and there was no greater prize than the Ark of the Covenant. The Templars were known for their use of caves and tunnels, and just recently, a structure was found in a cave system called Zedekiah's Cave, and this fortification was a guardhouse built to defend the Knights Templar if they had to escape the city. Legend says that they did indeed find the Ark and took it to their European headquarters in France, the famous Chartres Cathedral, and there it stayed for several hundred years. By the 14th century, the Knights Templar had lost most of their military power, but they had become wealthy from their banking practices. King Philip of France found himself deeply in debt to them, and in 1307, he convinced the Pope to move against the order and seize their assets. On October 13th, 1307, the Knights Templar were declared outlaws, and any found were arrested, tortured, and often executed. But when the Templars heard rumors that King Philip and the Pope were moving...
That was during the Inquisition, and that was also during the same time in which they killed the Cathars, the Albigensian massacre, again, these Gnostic heretics, of which I do believe that the Knights Templar got introduced to some of these Gnostic ideas. It's speculated whether they were worshiping Baphomet. You know, I have a book on, it's called The Affluence of Deity by Carl A.P. Ruck, who's a classicist, and he's kind of a psychedelic and entheogenic scholar talking about, historical references to the use of inebriating substances. Well, he makes the argument in favor of, because he's trying to make the claim in favor of the use of psychedelics for spirituality, that all these Gnostic groups were participating. And then he even makes reference to the Knights Templars and how they were participating in these very weird initiating rites that were verging on like sexuality, in claims, can't prove this, claims of like phallic worship, kissing the anus of the head leader, all types of stuff, which was related with the construction of the worship of Baphomet. Now, I do know a friend who's very knowledgeable about Templars, and he totally disagrees with this theory. But where this video is going to go is to Rosslyn Chapel. Rosslyn Chapel, the famous chapel in Scotland. Now, why would Rosslyn Chapel? I've actually talked about this before in streams on theories regarding psychedelics in the Eucharist, that after the Inquisition, so early 1300s, the major leaders of the Templar get killed by the Catholic Church. And so the powers that be then flee, and they end up making an agreement with Robert the Bruce, who was also excommunicated. He was also at odds with the Catholic Church. So Robert the Bruce, the famous king of Scotland who aided in Scottish independence against the British, he welcomes the Knights Templars to Scotland. And it's the Sinclair family, and I talk about this actually in a paper that I wanted to turn into some type of a book. It's on the history of psychedelic substances. It's the Sinclair clan there in Scotland that commissioned the building of the Rosslyn Chapel. And the Rosslyn Chapel has all these references to Amanita muscaria mushrooms, weird sort of depictions of what seems to be Pan, the god of panic, the half goat, half man, sort of split at the waist. Sort of nature pagan deities. There's a lot of pagan elements within Rosslyn Chapel, and people always wondered why. What has to do with the fact that it's the Templars and their supporting families that commissioned the building of it and imbued it with all these esoteric mysteries within it. So he's going to connect Rosslyn Chapel with the potential narrative that the Templars took the Ark of the Covenant. I do not believe that the Templars took the Ark of the Covenant myself. Diving into this stuff, I do not believe that happened. But he's going to make the claim, and I'm going to show you a current Templar, whatever that is, a current Templar claiming that that is what happened and that they took it back to France, back to Europe, and that the Ark of the Covenant makes its way to Scotland. So let's continue. That gives you a little bit of the context. And so it is interesting because it does comport with my own history in regards to entheogenic substances within Western Europe, its relationship to Christianity, and the Templars, Gnostic heresies, all seem to come up multiple times when you document that history.
Moving against them, they relocated the Ark yet again, this time to Scotland, where the Knights were welcomed by King Robert the Bruce. Robert the Bruce had been excommunicated by the church and was sympathetic to the Knights. So when the Knights Templar arrived in Scotland, they allied themselves with the wealthy and powerful Sinclair family. Together, they decided to build a place to keep the Ark of the Covenant safe, Rosslyn Chapel. And there's a lot about Rosslyn Chapel that connects to the Ark and the Holy Land. There are Templar motifs and sculptures all around the grounds. The chapel is laid out just like the first Temple of Solomon, but on a smaller scale. It has an inner Holy of Holies. This is where the Ark could have been kept, far away from the politics of Europe. But then, World War II.
Dun dun dun!
The Nazis were obsessed with the occult and religious relics.
It's just like the movie.
Well, Raiders got a lot of things right.
I am the monarch of the sea, the ruler of the Queen's Navy.
This is the spear that is said to have pierced the side of Jesus as he hung on the cross, known as the Holy Lance. This is the spear that is said to have pierced the side of Jesus as he hung on the cross during his crucifixion. They looked for the Holy Grail, the cup.
Now, remember we talked about the Holy Lance in our Crusade stream, that Peter Bartholomew was one of these Catholic monastics that during the siege of Antioch told Raymond that he needed to get his men to dig into the ground, that there was this immense relic that they were about to find, and then he ended up finding a spearhead and claimed that this was the spear that pierced the side of Christ. And even though the regular soldiers believed that to be the case, and it was this huge galvanizing, euphoric experience for the men who were facing almost not just defeat, but death. They were running out of resources in the siege of Antioch. It gave them renewed energy. And they ended up, again, taking Antioch soon after that. But here's what the interesting thing. Only one person of the leaders of the crusade, we were talking about those princes of the first crusade, only one was not given the privilege to see the spear, the Holy Lance, that was in Constantinople. It was on display as a holy relic that was stolen during the fourth crusade. So again, any notion that the Templars found the Holy Lance that pierced Christ's side, that relic was already accounted for centuries before, and it was in Constantinople. And so when we were talking about the crusade, I don't know if I mentioned this, but multiple of the princes, there was like 4 or 5 that were the leaders of the first crusade, when they were in Constantinople, Alexios Komnenos showed them the Holy Lance. So when this whole phenomenon happened during the Crusades and Peter Bartholomew, this Catholic monk, said, I discovered it and dig in the ground and then held it up and everybody believed it, the leaders knew that that wasn't the one, and including a Catholic bishop who was given the privilege of seeing it when he was in Constantinople, knew that it wasn't the actual lance. But they didn't want to say anything because it galvanized the Crusaders so much. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because any sort of narrative that the Templars found the Holy Lance and the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant, I mean, give me a break.
Cup that Jesus used during the Last Supper. They sought the Shroud of Turin, the cloth used to wrap the body of Jesus after his crucifixion. The Germans wanted the menorah, the 7-branched candelabrum that was created during the Exodus. And of course, they sought the other object created during the time of Moses, the Ark of the Covenant. After they conquered France, the Germans engaged in major archaeological digs at Chartres Cathedral and other suspected locations of the Ark. After France was overrun, President Roosevelt of the United States arranged for the contents of Roslyn Chapel to be moved to the Americas where they could be better defended. So the Ark was sent from Scotland to New Scotland, also known as Nova Scotia, specifically to Oak Island. While this is just a legend, there is a complex system of caves and tunnels on Oak Island, and nobody knows exactly who put them there or what they were hiding. There are stories of the Ark ending up in Rome, where it sits on one of the 50 miles of shelves in the Vatican secret archives. Some say the Ark is buried on Mount Nebo in Jordan, where Moses died. An Irish legend says the Ark was brought to Ireland by the prophet Jeremiah and is now located in a secret chamber beneath the hill of Tara. Or Jeremiah took the Ark to Egypt, and it's now located in a hidden chamber beneath the Sphinx. But there's evidence that the Ark isn't hidden away in a cave, or a tomb, or a secret chamber. It's not hidden at all. For hundreds of years, the Ark has been in a church, in what might sound like an unlikely place for a Jewish artifact. The Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia.
And we've already covered that, so we're not going to go through his whole section on Ethiopia. But I'm curious where the poll is now. Let's reanalyze the poll. 52% says lost to history. That's my vote. Second would be Ethiopia, 23%. Jerusalem, 17%. So you guys basically are in line with my perspective as well. Let me catch up before we get to the next section here. Zeph throws in 5. Thank you very much, brother. God bless. He says, do you think the entrance of the Theotokos tradition implies that the first ark was still there at the time? No, I do not. I do not. I do not think that they had possession of the ark at the time of Christ. My personal, as I've already said, so forgive me guys for reiterating so many times, I personally believe that it was either lost to history at the end, 587, 586. It was either buried in Jerusalem or it's just lost to history. It was destroyed or something like that happened. I don't know. Out of the other competing theories, I think the Ethiopian theory is the most interesting. But do I really believe that they actually have the Ark of the Covenant? No, I do not. And I do not believe the Ark of the Covenant contains any mystical power today. Christopher Scott throws in 5, says, Levites, levitate. Wingardium Leviosa. It reminds me, I was wanting to do a stream on Jordan Maxwell. Did you guys ever watch Jordan Maxwell? The astrotheology and sort of fake philology arguments on language and all that stuff. He influenced me so much when I was like 21 years old. I remember I spent hours consuming everything that Jordan Maxwell had. I went on his website and bought like his info package where you would buy a disc. It was basically 2 discs or something. And then you could access all these research files and documents on astrotheology and stuff like that. I remember I was so obsessed with Jordan Maxwell. And then I remember making one of the claims about, again, one of his philological things on what the meaning of words and stuff. And I said this to a professor during my undergraduate degree. And he looked at me and he goes, where are you getting this? And I said, well, and I made the Jordan Maxwell argument. And he's like, no, no, that's the English word. That has nothing to do. And then he broke down like the meaning of the word. I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh, okay. Because I was so convinced of all the Jordan Maxwell stuff. But it goes with this idea that Randall Carlson, well, they're called the Levites. So Levite, levitate, levitation. The Levites held the Ark of the Covenant because it had the power to levitate. It's like, wait, that doesn't logically compute. So maybe another stream topic in the future is to do like a Jordan Maxwell presentation and just watch it and try to debunk stuff as we go through it. That'd be kind of a fun stream. That'd be a fun stream. Nathaniel throws in 5, says, the problem with the Ethiopian narrative is that there is no way the Israelites or God would let the ark leave Israel during Solomon's reign. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that is all pre-Christ, so I believe that the ark still had some type of power. But again, the ark is just typological of Christ. But yeah, the Israelites would not let it leave. And certainly if they had the covenant, Israel would not let them keep it. Rui throws in another 5. Thank you so much. He says, you have to see Quinta da Regaleria about the Templars. I have not seen that. Does anybody know what Rui's referring to? Do you guys know what he's referring to? Quinta da Regaleria. Mira says like Levi Jeans. I'm not sure, brother. If you're in the chat still, Rui, give some clarifying comments. Is this a book? Is this a documentary? Is this an artifact? I'm not sure what it is. 253 Monty throws in 5, says, we was holding arcs and shit. Yeah, that's a Billy Carson argument. Absolutely. Let's see. Do you remember the scientific community trying to recreate the elements inside the ark? How would they even know what that's like? No, I don't remember that. But how would they even know what the inside of the ark was composed of or what it was like? We're told it was acacia wood covered in gold and silver. How would anybody know what it's like? And we're told the 10 Commandments, manna, and the rod of Aaron were placed inside. How would you recreate the elements? The Maxwell who wrote How to Make Friends and Influence People is a better Maxwell to follow. Nice. Thanks, Darth Grumpy Dad. All right, let's get into our last section here. This is an interview with a gentleman who I just put in the Knights Templar theory, and this guy, I was finding this guy everywhere. And so I found a shorter interview. This is a 5-minute clip of him being explaining the Ark of the Covenant from the Templar perspective. This is the LARPing Templar.
The Ark of the Covenant was basically like static capacitor, where it would build up static electricity just based on how it was built and what was put inside of it. It would build up static electricity over, a few hours or even a few days.
Now, again, we're told the only thing we know inside of it are the commandments, manna, and the rod of Aaron. But apparently they were conduits for electricity.
And then it would discharge it on the top of the ark, where the winged figures on top of it. Of course, this seemed like magic in the ancient world, and of course you couldn't touch it directly because it would shock you to death, which is even described in the Bible. It talks about, at one point in time the ark was about to fall off of a ox cart. Poor guy went to stabilize it. When he touched it, it killed him. So it was just that static discharge. These arks, and I say arks because they were not only in Jerusalem, could be found all throughout Egypt. In fact, all of the major temples of Egypt had one of these arks in them. And to this day, they're still depicted on the temple walls in Egypt. You can go to, whether you go to Temple of Hathor at Dendera, or Abydos, Temple of Seti I, or Temple of Isis at Philae, Temple of Horus, Edfu. All of these major temples had an ark in them. And this is depicted on their temple walls. From a Templar perspective, what we believe they were is they were remnants of a technology, an ancient technology that the Egyptians were preserving. And really what we're talking about, we're going back to the story of Noah and the flood. But we believe that there was, just like Plato said, that there was an advanced civilization in antiquity. It got wiped out during the time that Plato said it got wiped out, which...
So that's the theory of Atlantis and Lemuria.
Was during the Younger Dryas cataclysm. There were pockets of survival from that cataclysm, and some of them were preserving these arcs, this arc technology. The temple over the centuries has managed to secure 6 of these arcs, which we have in a secure location right now, but there were probably as many as 100 arcs at one point in time in antiquity.
Now, do you guys believe this? The Knights Templar apparently is in possession of 6 of the Arks of the Covenant. 6 arcs, and they're being protected right now.
I would believe.
What was the main purpose of the ark? Just to give energy? Did it have some sort of metaphysical power, or is it just simply physical energy?
It had a twofold thing. It did provide, it broadcasted electricity within a region, certainly within the temples themselves. There's some speculation that an ark could have even been put in the Great Pyramid, and that the Great Pyramid would just then become this broadcast station to broadcast electricity within a region. And so when the cataclysm happened, that just kind of wiped all that out. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, they were also placed in the sanctum sanctorum of these temples. And you find that being described in the legends of, or the stories of King Solomon's temple as well. Well, these temples were built like human bodies in stone. So especially the Egyptian temples, but also you find it in Hindu temples, in the cathedrals of Notre Dame in France and Germany, but and of course Solomon's temple. But they were built in such a way, the building was reminiscent of the human body. And so where the sanctum sanctorum was at the area of the, what we would call the third eye on the human head. And hence, in fact, this is the reason why these are called your temples, because that's where the temple is. But that
So I did a video early on in this YouTube channel. This was when I was getting out of the psychedelic world, where I did an interview with Dr. David Nichols. He was one of the only people that was permitted by the U.S. government to synthesize psilocybin, LSD, and various psychedelics for experimentation by the government. And he was a neuroscientist actually at Purdue here in Indiana at one point. I think he's now in North Carolina. But I did an interview with him because one of his big things that the psychedelic community hates about Dr. David E. Nichols is he dismisses this idea of the pineal gland, right? This whole idea of the third eye that the Templar guy here is putting forth. He uses basically brain scans talking about the dimethyltryptamine, the actual uptake ability, melatonin in the pineal, and basically it has no real effect on the body. It basically just is related to your sleep cycles. Melatonin is released through the pineal gland, but it has no spiritual property, or it's opened up, or DMT, when you smoke it, is uptake through the pineal gland. None of that stuff is true. So even this whole, again, is this guy Christian? Is he Catholic? I'm very curious what this guy's spiritual worldview is. He presents himself as a Grand Master Templar. He's a Grand Master of the Order of the Templars. I don't know what that is, but I know that anybody spouting this third eye nonsense, spirituality BS, you shouldn't take them very seriously. That stuff is very easily scientifically debunked. Now, it doesn't mean that people didn't experience spiritually the forehead being a sort of spiritual power of conscience or self-awareness. Okay, that's phenomenology. That's how you experience yourself. But the pineal gland, no, not at all.
The third eye, which we associate with the pineal gland, is kind of the communication device with God from a metaphysical standpoint. The ark symbolically represented that because it was the powerhouse in the temple itself. So when that ark was put in the temple, it kind of turned the temple on.
Van Walen says he's already into Vatican III. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Grandmaster Magic the Gathering, maybe.
Made it functional, and I think probably in the ancient world, just the static discharge from it, and if you go in the temple and touch a statue or something, it would shock you. That was magic, right? That was alive on some level, you know? And so I think that's part of what was going on in the ancient world.
So there you have it. That's right from the mouth of a Grandmaster Templar. And that's what I was telling you at the onset of today's stream is it gets really quacky when you start getting into like the Holy Grail theories, the Ark of the Covenant theories, Atlantis, ancient civilization theories. And not even to dismiss some of that stuff, because I'm open to, an ancient civilization. I'm a creationist, so I don't believe in macroevolution. I don't believe in the Big Bang. But where the point of how, civilization emerged, yeah, I'm open to that potentially being maneuverable on our historic timeline. But you get into wild stuff like this Templar guy. I mean, just total nonsense. And this is also another one of these guys. Did you guys ever hear of Ron Wyatt? He was an American nurse anesthesist and a pseudo-archaeologist who claimed to have made 100 biblical archaeology discoveries. He claimed to have found the landing place of Noah's Ark, which we covered Noah's Ark in the last Logos news stream there in Turkey on Mount Ararat, which I actually think there's credit to. I do think there's something credit worthy there. But this guy, Ron Wyatt, claims that he was allowed to see the actual Ark of the Covenant and blood of Jesus Christ in Israel by the Israelis. And so the Garden Tomb Association of Jerusalem states the following. So the Garden Tomb is where he claims that he found the Ark of the Covenant. And it says, the Council of the Garden Tomb Association totally refutes the claim of Ron Wyatt to have discovered the original Ark of the Covenant or any other biblical artifacts within the boundaries of the area known as the Garden Tomb in Jerusalem. Though Wyatt was allowed to dig within the privately owned garden on a number of occasions, the last occasion being the summer of 1991, staff members of the association observed his progress and entered his excavated shaft. As far as we are aware, nothing was ever discovered to support his claims, nor have we seen any evidence of biblical artifacts or temple treasures. And so then you have the Israeli Antiquities Authority totally denounce him as a pseud, and you even had Seventh-day Adventists denounce him as well. So this guy, wild guy. Well, this, again, he has long, hour-long videos describing, seeing the Ark of the Covenant, and this was a shorter video of him describing what it looked like when he saw the Ark of the Covenant, which I do not believe in any way this guy actually witnessed.
So I was back there. They took it out, examined it under the microscope, and the one technician called the other one over there, and then they called the boss over there, and they were talking Hebrew a mile a minute there for a little bit, and they looked at me and they said, Mr. Wyatt, this human blood only has 24 chromosomes in it. Everybody else has 46. You see, 23 from your mother, 23 from your father, 22 autosomes from your mother, 22 autosomes from your father. You get an X from your mother, you may get an X or a Y from your father, all right? This blood had 23 chromosomes from the mother's side, one Y chromosome only. You see, the child could not have developed if they hadn't had the autosomes from the mother. So all of his physical characteristics were determined by his mother's side of the family, her autosomes. His maleness was determined by this one Y that came from the source, not a human male. Then they said, this blood is alive. And then they said, whose blood is this? I said, it's the blood of your Messiah.
It's the blood of your Messiah.
But anyway, when I walked in, there were 4 angels standing in the chamber.
This is him talking about seeing the Ark of the Covenant for the first time. He walks in and there's 4 angels guarding it, according to Ron Wyatt.
And they looked just like people on the street. When I saw them, I was rather stunned, and I was going to ask, how did you get in here, or something to that effect. But I found I couldn't move or talk or nothing like that. So one of them instructed me to set up my video camera and aim it at the Ark of the Covenant. They went over, each took a corner of the mercy seat, lifted it up, and said, take the tables of stone out of the Ark of the Covenant. God wants everyone to see those. So I went over and I took it out. I wasn't able to move until he told me to do these things. And so they put the lid back on, or the mercy seat back on. I stood there with the tables of stone. I didn't know what to do with them. The angel came and took them and put them on a shelf in the side of the chamber there. Behind the Ark of the Covenant, the whole wall is the most beautiful crystal I couldn't even imagine it. The colors of the rainbow are rippling in all directions behind it. I mean, it is mind-boggling. And I know that God, it's going to be there. I was told, and specifically what law, but people aren't ready to hear that yet. Men are working on a religious law that will require you and me to break God's 10 Commandments. When that law is passed, is when the tables of stone are to be put on public display, and people are to be made aware that God requires us to keep those 10 Commandments, all right? And that's when it will be shown. Now, I went to my hotel, I looked in the viewfinder, played back my video to make sure I had it, and then it struck me, where am I going to keep this? Where can I keep it that it'll be safe? So I took it and I went back in the chamber, and I mumbled something. I meant to say, I don't know where I can keep this safe. The angel took it and laid it on the tables of stone. So I have no access to the video of that until you're ready.
Well, isn't that convenient? Now, it's kind of hard to hear if you guys didn't pick that up. Ron Wyatt claims that he walked into the chamber in which he discovers the Ark of the Covenant. 4 angels guarded it. They lifted up the mercy seat and asked him to take out the tablets of the 10 Commandments, the original tablets, which he did. They told him where to position his video camera. I assume this is somewhere in the early 90s. Videotaped the Ark of the Covenant with the beautiful crystal glistening across the wall in the colors of the rainbow from all directions. Goes back to his hotel room, rewatches the videotape that he just watched, which you can visit. According to him, you can see the Ark of the Covenant as clear as day. And then he walks back into the chambers and tells the angels, I don't know where to keep this tape safe. And so they take it from him, and now he has no evidence that any of that ever happened, other than the story of him telling it to you. I mean, just unbelievable. Yeah, that guy is a schizo. Crazy eyes. I, for one, believe him. Yeah, I bet you do, James Ryan. Yes, the angel took his videotapes. The angel took his videotapes to keep him safe. That's literally what he's telling you. The angels need the videotapes to keep them safe, guys. Kind of making it public, this being world news, this would be one of the biggest discoveries in world history. No, he gives the videotape cassette, the cassette back to the angels, who then place it on the stone. I assume the 10 Commandments sitting on top of the Ark of the Covenant, and now he has no access to it. I wonder if they took his sanity too. Yeah, I think they did. Rui throws in 5, says, Quinta della Regalaria is one of the Templar sites with many Masonic symbols that has an initiation place. Oh, okay. I have to look into that. Let me pull it up. Quinta da Laria. I got it. It's in Portugal. I got it. Thank you very much, Rui, for that. Really appreciate it. All right. Well, guys, I think that's going to do it mostly for me today and our stream. Big reminder, big takeaways. What's the stream ultimately about? Well, the big takeaway is that we as Orthodox Christians are not hyper obsessed with finding the Ark of the Covenant, because in our sacramental theological paradigm, it's all been fulfilled in Christ. It's the Theotokos who then houses God, gives him flesh, and dwells among us. There's not just an object for the dwelling place of God. It's now human nature. It's now the flesh. It's human embodiment. It's personhood. And so from Theotokos, it moves to the Christ, through the church. The Ark to the Theotokos to the church. The church is the Ark. It's the Ark of salvation. It is the Ark of God's covenant, the second covenant, right? Because we're not focused on the first covenant anymore. The first covenant has been superseded. It's been fulfilled. It's the second covenant that we follow. It's the covenant that Christ commanded us. And from that perspective, that's why the Byzantines had no interest in discovering the Ark of the Covenant, because they couldn't care less. Now, the Holy Grail, the cup, the chalice that maybe Christ had at the Last Supper, that would be important. That's a Christian relic. And when I looked into the history in Byzantium, they were focused on relics of saints. It was either saints, Christ, or the Theotokos. Those were the only physical objects they cared about. Finding gold or medallions from the Old Testament period, First Temple, Second Temple, it wasn't the main priority. It wasn't a focus. It had no theological significance. And so for us, where is the Ark of the Covenant? Probably lost to history. Maybe it's in Ethiopia. Maybe it's in Jerusalem in the Temple Mount. But it really doesn't matter for us. Either way, it makes no difference. And I believe because of that, it has no ultimate power. It is not efficacious as it was in the Old Testament, because God's already come. He's already given a new commandment. We've moved beyond. And that's why the search for the Ark of the Covenant tends to be with Judaizers. We find them with the heretics of the Gnostics and the Templars. We find them in these weird evangelical Protestant sects and denominations. And of course, Jews themselves are still in search of the Ark of the Covenant. So it's really a game that we're not even playing, nor are we interested in. So that's going to conclude today's stream on where is the Ark of the Covenant? We don't know. And it's probably lost to history. And according to you guys in the chat on the poll that we put up, you also believe it's probably lost to history at 51%, Ethiopia at 22%, Jerusalem at 16%, and the Vatican at 10%. So, all right. Dama says, to me, it makes no sense that the Ark disappeared into thin air. I don't think it's irrelevant. Its history and its ancient relic are important, albeit not magical or mystical any longer. Yeah, that's why I said it's important as a historical relic, but the idea that so many people have, like Billy Carson or the Templar guy, or even some of the Jews, were talking about how when they find it, they won't be able to touch it. They'll need, they'll have to go through special precautions. The power is not in the object. The power is not in the object, and these people want to believe that the power is somehow still in the object. So I don't think it just disappeared. I think that it was probably lost to history. It got buried somewhere, or it got destroyed. But ultimately, theologically, it's no longer significant. It's in a Mr. Beast video. You win it if you can keep your hand on it, but you get electrocuted. That's funny. Howard says it's probably in Ethiopia, but been stolen by Israeli intel and getting ready to be put into the third temple soon. Ethiopia's pretty much gone evangelical heretical now in the new age, in the new generation. I know some good. I actually shout out to Hinnock. Henny is a friend here in Indiana that he's Ethiopian and he's a good Christian man. So he's not influenced by a lot of the new age or, a lot of the heretical stuff. Evangelical heresies and stuff like that. But yeah, do I think Ethiopia is still preserving the Ark of the Covenant and that it's filled with radioactive activity causing cataracts and radiation on the men who guard it? No, I don't. I'm a little bit skeptical of that. But I think the Ethiopian theory is the most interesting. I really do. If it still exists and someone has possession of it, Ethiopia would be an interesting answer. But do we believe that Israel would allow them to have it? Don't you guys think Israel already knows for certain whether Ethiopia has the Ark of the Covenant or not? They have to. They have to. The Israeli intelligence agents know whether they have it or not. That's a fact. So, Seraphim Goose said, I have a good friend named Enoch. He became Orthodox here. Oh, nice. Yeah, I have a friend, I have an Ethiopian friend who's not Eastern Orthodox yet, but he comes to our church. We're working on him. He's in the process. But my buddy, he's a really good guy. And so, yeah, I think, I assume, Seraphim Goose, your friend is Ethiopian? Nah, he's Eritrean. I think he's actually both Eritrean and Ethiopian. I know part of his family is Eritrean. We have an Eritrean and Ethiopian family at our Orthodox parish, actually. Anyways, guys, smash that like. That's going to do it for me. I got another stream I'll be doing this week is one on a deep dive into Kosovo and Serbian Orthodox persecution. I will probably end up doing a Logos news stream at some point. And another stream like this that I wanted to do was a deep dive into Nikola Tesla. So I'm hoping if I got time to do one on Nikola Tesla, and then the next sponsored stream after Kosovo is on satanic ritual abuse. We'll be looking at a clinical approach to dealing with people who've gone through satanic ritual abuse and the mental problems it causes. So I got tons of content this week that we hope to get out. So thank you all so much. Major shout out, by the way, for the massive gifting of super chats to Mura Takbulut. Thank you so much, brother Mura, for the generous support of a 20 gifted Codal Crew memberships. Really appreciate that. And thank you everyone who supported. I really appreciate it. Maybe next time we can reach the goal, but thank you all so much. I'm very, very appreciative of everything you guys do to support my work. Smash that like, and I will see you guys in the next one. As always, until then, God bless.